Sword of Coming Chapter 1222. Chapter 1222 Pride. The Great Wall of Sword Chi was once a place where it was easier to buy wine than fetch water. Today's noisy market is like the continuation of a new page in a book. But no matter what, it's better than nothing. It is better than being completely silent and simply becoming a foreigner visiting this place to pay homage to the past. Unlike the old deaf child who was so worried and twisted, Xiego noticed Chen Pinggan's strange behavior at the moment, so she asked directly, "Mountain Master, he is seriously injured. He is very capable. Do you need me to follow him? Can Xiaoma help us find the place?" "Don't worry, Mountain Lord. Xiaoma and I, aside from swordsmanship, are also good at concealing energy and changing appearance. I also have a unique swordsmanship that can cut off cause and effect. It's not just a boast, it's no better than Chunyang Luyan's hand, and shaking hands outside the world is too inferior, and it is impossible to follow the clues to teach the other party to master fortune-telling and deduction. If she were an immortal, she would be deemed unworthy to be a Taoist companion with Xiao Mo whenever she had to hand out two swords. She is still very confident about ordinary Ascension Realm monks such as Jianghu and his ilk, who are really like paper. She had already secretly flipped through the first dozen pages of Chen Lingzhen's collection of strangers. Unless it is the great celestial master of Longhu Mountain or the fire dragon master of Paidi Peak, these are the more difficult candidates for harmony in the 14th realm, so she does not dare to say anything to death. She only needs to call Xiaoma together and it will be safe. Well, Chen Pinggan stretched his hand around, patted the hilt of the sword lightly and said, "I just had a fight with someone. It was a narrow victory. The price was not small. Even the night swim in the sheath was cut off. You don't need to find the place, it's already refreshing ending." The old deaf boy still knows some things about the world, and he already understood it just from this conversation. Senior Beijing really didn't regard himself as an outsider, and young Yingguan really didn't regard her as an outsider either. Xiego gave a thumbs up. Since ancient times, talented people have been punished by heaven, and those who can pass the test have accumulated Taoist power. After this battle, the master of the mountain will surely practice like a broken bamboo, unimpeded, and go straight to the Ascension realm. When the old deaf boy heard this, his heart was shocked and he gasped. Could it be that Luoshan has the same atmosphere as a summer palace? I am an upright person by nature, but I am not good at this kind of rhetoric. When I get to Luolu Mountain, won't I have to be unsocial, and will I have to sit on the bench there? Since there was no trace of sword immortal Gao Yi for the time being, Wei Yudian mustered up the courage to follow the group of people. He was so close but could not hear the content of their conversation. Chen Pinggan stopped, turned around and asked, "Is there anything else going on with Wei Jianxian?" Wei Yudian said with a shy face, "Junior students dare not call themselves sword cultivators." It turns out that her identity as a sword cultivator is rather embarrassing, because the origin of the natal flying sword is erroneous, and the natal magical power contained in the flying sword is even more useless. Chen Pinggan said, "I'm leaving here soon. I'd like to trouble fellow Taoist Wei to talk to me about something." Wei Yudian quickly explained, "I dare not hide it. I came here to take refuge. To be precise, I came here to avoid the entanglement of Qingwei sect sword immortal Gao Yi." Chen Pinggan said, "I guessed it, but this is a personal grudge between your two families and sections. It seems to have nothing to do with me, right? To say the least, according to the records of the Summer Palace, the last sword cultivator of the Xianxia sword sect rushed to the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Nearly 200 years have passed since I have been practicing demon slaying. As for the other two groups of Chi practitioners, they are not sword cultivators and have no record of any military exploits. It is impossible that the previous generation of hidden officer Xiao Min deliberately omitted the military exploits of your Xianxia sword sect." Wei Yudian said with a shy face, "We are the current head of the Xianxia sword sect." Chen Pinggan cut off the conversation and said, "I know Ding Fai, whose Taoist name is Tong Jun, wears a sword Jianzhen and a flying sword Jieshen. He is the leader of the Sea Sword sect in Shanfangshan. Master Ding is good at Zhu Yuk. He is easy to count with plum blossoms, and is especially proficient in hexagrams after hearing sounds. There are many strange stories spread in the countryside of Wuxiaza dynasty. He is a descendant of ancient Jin. It is said that he can curse fellow monks to kill without seeing blood, and can also save people invisibly, so he is the people on the mountain are known as ghost seekers, and they don't dare to be easily provoked. In addition to these superficial things, there are actually some inside stories which I know all about. I guess it must be Master Ding who helped you make a prediction, asking you to come here and wait for the opportunity. Is it good luck to avoid disaster? Or is it already known that fellow Taoist Long Sheng will act righteously?" The old deaf boy waved his hands repeatedly, I don't have enough Taoist power to do anything. Wei Yudian took out a brocade pouch from his sleeve, plucked up the courage, and handed it to the young hermit official who had heard his name for a long time and was fascinated by him with a blushing face. He kept reminding himself to speak faster and quickly explained, "This time we are going down the mountain. When I traveled far away, the boss gave me a total of 3 tips. Once, I was asked to choose a good and auspicious day to open a shop and sell wine. There was a command on the wind and thunder note: if you encounter a dragon, you will stop. If you encounter a green, you will be happy." One time was let his disciple Wang Ke go on a night trip one day, and Wang Ke got the opportunity to combine 2 swords. "The master told me to open this last tip bag only when I meet a dragon and a young man, but he repeatedly told me not to read the text content, only to open it in person. Just leave it to any expert from Long or Qing." Chen Pingan took the brocade bag, took out the small note, took a look at it, put it back in the brocade bag and handed it back to Wei Yudian. His expression became visibly gentler and he said, "You can rest assured to do business here. I will. If you travel to Liuxia continent, you will visit Xianxia sword sect in Fenzhou Weisher. As for when fellow Taoist Wei will be able to return to Liuxia continent, we will wait for the notification from head Ding in the future." Xiego asked in his heart, "Mountain Master, what's going on?" Chen Pingan said helplessly, "Hua Furong, the founder of the Xianxia sword sect, is also the master of Wei Yudian. She traveled to the Great Wall of Sword Qi for the 2nd time. She has a good relationship with the Ning Mansion and is a frequent visitor." Xiego suddenly realized, if I had known there was such a relationship, I wouldn't have beaten the out of that sword immortal or that master. Chen Pingan asked, "I would like to ask, why is Wei Daoyu not a sword cultivator?" The Wei family in Fenzhou Shangmiao village in Luxiazu is a Taoist family with a long history and is one of the 6 major sects in the world. The famous Taifu Temple is the family temple of Wei Yudian. The colorful hanging sculptures in the Taoist temple contain 365 divine kings on duty, which are unique and the best in the continent. Wei Yudian carefully put the tips into her bag and felt relieved. When she heard the question, she answered with a respectful expression, "The disciple is not the kind of innate sword immortal embryo. It is because the ancestors of the family went to sea in the early years and received the legacy of an ancient sword immortal and the inheritance of swordsmanship. One of the relics is a flying sword. It has been passed down from generation to generation that due to fate, I got the flying sword when I was young. I took the initiative to identify the owner and entered a natal acupoint to warm it up on its own. The flying sword was taken by that person. The ancestor's temporary name is Xiao Jian. After I was lucky enough to refine it for more than 100 years, I have only discovered one natal magical power, which is to imitate the natal flying sword of other sword cultivators, but it can only support 1 stick of incense. Time, when the time comes, will immediately return to its original state. Therefore, it is true that when you are weak, you will be weak, but it is not necessarily true that you will be strong when you are strong." Xiego grinned, "Such a fun natal flying sword, the ancient sword immortal soldier must be very motivated to refine it before solving it." Chen Pingan thought for a while and asked, "Didn't Master Ding give any hexagrams about this hard-won flying sword?" Wei Yudian hesitated for a moment and said, "Every time the master predicts fortune, he will damage his Taoism and consume a lot of energy. Even so, the master still made a hexagram for me, but the hexagram is relatively general. There is only 1 sentence, over and over again. And 3. The head of the sect is a fortune teller, and there has always been an ancestral motto of the sect that cannot be interpreted in 2 ways. Chen Pingan thought for a moment and said, "I have a suggestion. You ask your family or the Xianxia sword sect to help you find a flying sword, whether it costs a lot of money or a lot of favors. You try to use it with the sword." Sword refining. Wei Yudian had a puzzled look on his face. What does it mean to make a sword with a sword, and what is the reason? Xiego nodded vigorously. "Our mountain master is so smart, even she and Xiaomo can't compare." Chen Pingan had no choice but to explain patiently, "Maybe this flying sword should not be named Xiaojian, but should be changed to a name similar to Jiuduo, which would be more appropriate. The 3 mentioned by Master Ding may mean that this flying sword, the sword can occupy 3 flying swords in the magpie's nest, and there is a chance to possess the natal magical power of 3 flying swords at the same time. This can also explain why the ancient swordsman who sat in seclusion at sea until his death, why when Bingli died he would rather use he had great perseverance and put in a lot of effort to peel it off, but he was unwilling to merge it with his own soul and add a fairy fate to the next life. This was because he was very conceited and valued this natal flying sword. Once it was smelted into nothingness, even if he still has the next life to renew his fate as an immortal, to be able to enlighten himself and remember his previous life, and to climb mountains and practice Taoism again, it is destined that there will no longer be such a special and magical flying sword in the world. Wei Yudian's joyful expression was beyond words. She didn't know how to thank this young hermit official for a moment. It can't be the kind of extremely vulgar promise in novels about talented men and beautiful ladies. Even if she was willing to do this, he still looked down upon himself. The old deaf boy nodded slightly, and he was close to the truth. His gloomy expression was as usual, and his mood was without any disturbance. Whether he was a swordsman or not back then, no matter how high his level is now, Lord Yinguan is all Lord Yinguan. Qin Pingan reminded, some things on the mountain are extraordinary, so if you get a chance you will suffer a disaster. Wei Yudian quickly stabilized his mind. Qin Pingan said, as for what kind of debt collection method and how it appears in front of you, it depends on your fate with that person. For example. After waiting for a while, seeing that the young Yinguan did not speak further, Wei Yudian had to ask, for example. Seeing that she still didn't understand, Qin Pingan had no choice but to do the next best thing and explain to her. For example, the reincarnation of the ancient sword immortal is Gao Yi, who seems to be entangled with you in everything. Or it's not Gao Yi, but someone else. When you refine the first extra flying sword, he may come to you. What will you do then? Wei Yudian was in a state of confusion. Qin Pingan said slowly, this kind of cycle of cause and effect, collecting debts and repaying debts and avoiding them, is useless. It is nothing more than self-inflicted suffering, and it is just self-relief and self-destruction. No matter whether it is up or down, pay back debts and turn evil fate into good fate. Practice in the mountains and walk outside the mountains. There is a road to walk on the mountain and down the mountain, which is the Tao. Life and human feelings are in line with the laws of nature, which is the Dharma. Together, it is the practice of the Tao. Wei Yudian stopped and solemnly bowed his head as a courtesy. Keep it in mind and follow the instructions carefully. Xiego began to ask about general offerings again. Fellow Taoist Long Sheng, do you understand? The old deaf child wanted to say something so profound and simple, and there was nothing he could not understand. However, due to the great power of ancient white scenery, the old deaf child changed his words and said, I don't quite understand. I just feel that the logic is wise. Xiego patted the old deaf child on the shoulder and said with pity in his eyes, my understanding is a bit weak, no wonder I fell down. Qin Pingan asked some questions about the ins and outs between her and Gao Yi, and then he said, let's say goodbye. Although Wei Yudian wanted to chat more, he had already issued an eviction order, so she had to say goodbye and leave. Suddenly she remembered something and asked, that Gao Yi? Qin Pingan smiled and said, maybe he was scared off by Senior Long Sheng. The old deaf child felt helpless. When Wei Yudian walked to the door of her wine shop, she couldn't help but look back. She had no reason to think of a poem that her master often copied and recited, but now the conversation was like a torrent, and dust suddenly arose. Ancient friendship is like true gold, its color will never return after 100 refinements. This young hidden official indeed has the character of a knight in ancient times. With about half a stick of incense left to spare, Qin Pingan came to the base of the city wall and looked at the land sword immortal who was about to fall apart. He still showed no sign of waking up. The Confucian temple attendant sage who was stationed here also did not show up. The meaning of dissuading the fight was just leaving a young sect master indifferent. A Taoist who is only 2 years old in the Yupu realm is still a sword cultivator. He founded a sect at such a young age. Not to mention Liuxia continent, he is an extraordinary figure in the entire Haoran world. Xiego asked curiously, why don't you call Wei Yudian and have a drum to gong discussion with this swordsman who is lying on the ground and sleeping soundly, and make it clear face to face? Qin Pingan said, suppose Gao Yi is really Wei Yudian's debt collector. With us by his side, Wei Yudian's Taoist heart will inevitably feel confident. Taoist monks cannot rely on external forces to escape disaster before their manpower is exhausted. This matter is important to Taoism. It's in the way. The old deaf boy nodded and said, that's the truth. Qin Pingan smiled and asked, such a heavy blow? Xiego laughed, I'm just saving his life. The old deaf boy still nodded in agreement. Senior Bai Jing's words were true. If it were the young Qi Tingji who heard those same words, he would probably be on his way. Xiego glanced sideways at the old deaf boy and began to give orders to the general worshippers as the second worshipper, wake him up. In Luapa Mountain the realm is useless. She finally caught someone who entered Luapa Mountain later than her, and he was also a demon monk who was used to being a punching bag. Why don't you pick him up? The old deaf boy has no brain defects, so how can he do it? Qin Pingan said, wake him up and seize the time to chat. I will return to Aquarius continent soon. Only then did the old deaf man take action, squatting down, reaching out to hold the man's shoulders and shook them a few times, allowing the soul, muscles, bones and energy of the young swordsman to return to their original positions. Seeing that Gao Yi woke up, Qin Pingan said, I have heard about the personal grudge between you and Wei Yudian. The Wei family's dynasty is indeed unethical and should not break the contract. You came here alone, found Wei Yudian, and wanted to. There is no problem in getting the money back with interest. I'm not interested in this kind of love and hatred. The reason why Xiego attacked you is because you shouldn't say dirty words here. Gao Yi leaned against the wall, raised his head and stared at the man in the green shirt in the middle, then looked at the girl in the mink hat from the corner of his eye, and sneered, what a good trick I have learned from you. Do you dare to give me your name? Xiego was really not used to this kind of idiot who couldn't figure out the situation. He kicked him, and the sole of his shoe hit the young swordsman's forehead. He hit the city head with the back of his head, causing the young swordsman to faint again. The old deaf boy had no choice but to squat down again and wake up the young swordsman. Gao Yi didn't dare to say harsh words anymore, he just lowered his head and stretched out his fingers to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. Qin Pingan continued, when Wei Yudian opens a shop here and sells wine, don't bother her. But as long as she returns to xianxia, you can wait for her at sea, or seek revenge and collect debts in Luxiazu. Each one depends on his own ability. Do it at your own risk. Gao Yi crossed his arms across his chest and remained silent. He's like that kind of arrogant young man in the market. He won't lose even if he loses. Even if his head is split open and his mouth is full of blood and he can't open his mouth, he still has to speak with his eyes. As long as you don't beat me to death today, sooner or later I will kill you one day. The old deaf boy rubbed his chin. It was strange. He had been slapped away by Senior Bai Jing before. How come this kid still didn't know the pros and cons and showed it so grandly on his face? The most famous great monks in Liuxia continent are Jianghu from Qinggong Mountain and xuanhuan, the heavenly master of Tianyu Cave, the only two who have ascended to the realm. The so-called mountain tops of a continent are not very high. Compared with the real Huolong from Luzhou and Beiju, Lu Jubao from Aizu is far behind. Since this kid is not the direct disciple of Jinghao or Xuanhuan, is he an illegitimate child? Qin Pingan said, you can be unconvinced or you can be dissatisfied verbally or mentally, it's up to you. I'm just stating a fact to you. After saying this, Qin Pingan shook his head and smiled to himself. It's time to find an opportunity to go to Jianghu Mountain. Qin Pingan glanced at Gao Yi and said, in this area north of Shirwanda Mountain and south of Old Mirage, my words are more effective than the Confucian Temple. When Gao Yi heard this, he hesitated to speak. In the end, he didn't say anything. Qin Pingan turned and left. Gao Yi grinned, stood up, stretched out his hand to rub his ribs, and he wrinkled his face in pain. The girl in the mink hat looked at the slender figure and her strength was amazing. What kind of realm? Could it be that she is a female martial artist who has good looks and hides her secrets? Is there such a number one person in the world? Jingqian? Is that him? Xiego suddenly turned his head and raised his hand. Gao Yi was so frightened that he leaned back and pressed against the wall. Qin Pingan calculated the time and said, you all go your own way and we will meet again at Luapa Mountain later. I will ask you carefully about the details of cultivation in the immortal realm. Xiego looked indifferent. It was very simple for the immortal to break through the realm and ascend. She just said doubtfully, it doesn't look like the mountain master's behavior. Qin Pingan smiled and said, senior brother asked me to say some crazy words while I was young. After trying it, I found that I didn't adapt to it and it was still quite awkward. I will try to avoid it in the future if possible. Afterwards, Qin Pingan said, I may need to trouble you to keep an eye on this guy at least 10 days and a half. Xiego understood in his heart and he geared up and said, the mountain master suspects that he is a chess piece that has never been used in the wilderness? Luxiazu now has an average reputation, very average. Overall, it is much worse than Fuyao continent and Jinjia continent, and only slightly better than Tongya continent. Qin Pingan nodded and said, don't forget, Gao Yi is a sword cultivator, not an ordinary chi practitioner who comes here to travel around and expand his world. The Great Wall of Sword Chi is extraordinary to Howren sword cultivator. There are only two possibilities for a sword cultivator to say something like that here. Either he is young, he is a sect master and a swordsman, and he is so proud that he does not know how high the world is. In addition, he hates the Xianxia sword sect so much. With the Wei family, They felt that they had endured humiliation for nearly 100 years and that revenge was just around the corner, so they got carried away and blurted out of composure. Either Gao Yi is someone who has long disagreed with the Great Wall of Sword Qi. There are two possibilities. One is that he has an excellent secret tutor and cannot deal with the Great Wall of Sword Qi. For example, Gao Yi's preacher once served in the Great Wall of Sword Qi in his early years. The Great Wall of Sword Qi and who asked the sword lost and suffered a big loss. There are many records of this type of sword cultivator in the Summer Palace. Either Gao Yi was a chess piece raised by the wild world and used to fight the internal strife in Liuxia continent. Of course it makes more sense if the two possibilities can be combined. Xiego praised, "The mountain master's eyes are like a torch, and he knows everything even when he sees something." Chen Pingon glanced at Xiego, who nodded. The old deaf man spoke to his disciples from the bottom of his heart. "Yoyu, when you reach Luapa Mountain, you can no longer rely on your master. You may have to fend for yourself." Yoyu asked strangely, "Why did master say this?" The old deaf boy shook his head with a grimace, without explaining that being a teacher did not fit in with the ethos of Luo Luo Shan. Gao Yi sat back on the ground and began to breathe in and out to adjust his breath. The slap and the kick from the girl in the mink hat made his body full of vitality, but fortunately, it didn't hurt the foundation of Tao. In the inner courtyard of Gao Yi's heavenly palace, which is the so-called entrance point of Taoism, there are 3 flowers blooming, one high and one low hanging in the air. Unfortunately, there is still a long way to go before the spirit and energy can be blended into one. But among the tallest golden flowers, there is a real-life courtyard was opened, with a gate facing the east. In the far distance, the sea of clouds rolled, the water flow undulated, and a towering sacred tree stood. There were red qi and green xiao entwined on the tree. It was the avenue for Gao Yi's 2 natal flying swords. Manifestation, the sacred tree of the East China Sea, the swinging branch. In the golden flower courtyard, it was like a scene where the moon was held in the middle of the night. When Gao Yi sent out a ray of spiritual consciousness and came to the courtyard room here, someone who was leaning outdoors disappeared and he could only hear people walking by but no human form could be seen. There was a series of subtle sounds of clogs stepping on the ground outside the door. Gao Yi said with a grain of salt in his mind, "He is Chen." Suddenly there was a burst of spring thunder in the sky and the earth, and the word "be careful" echoed repeatedly. Gao Yi was so shocked that he still didn't say the other party's name. Gao Yi, who was barefoot and with disheveled hair, walked to the threshold and said, "Are you so cautious across 2 worlds? What's more, you personally said that your identity is not hidden from the light, and you have made contributions to the world, so the Confucian Temple will not, even if I don't control it, even if I don't come to detain it, it's nothing more than losing my physical body. I need to open up a mansion in my mind, build a dojo and keep a little bit of my true spirit alive." Seeing that the other party still showed no intention of meeting him, Gao Yi continued to ask, "Who is the scholar surnamed Lu that you are obsessed with? Can you still not let go of him?" In an instant, Gao Yi lost all consciousness, as if he was imprisoned in a time-worn cage. It was pitch black, only his thoughts still existed. Gao Yi could only have a thought in his mind, and he bowed his head to admit his mistake with her. Suddenly the light shone brightly. This moment his mind was free. According to the agreement, he did not dare to step out of the threshold and enter the world outside the door that she had turned into a forbidden land. Gao Yi sat cross-legged and said to himself, "It was you who said that there are still a few remaining swordsmanship channels here that are still lingering. This is where I have the opportunity. Only here can I have the opportunity to return to Liuxia continent and help you seize that sword. I have been waiting for this great opportunity for thousands of years, but as a result, I have suffered such shame and humiliation before I even climbed onto the city wall. Back then you and I made a contract to let you escape the disaster. They said that the Lord humiliated the subject and died, so you turned a blind eye? Nowadays, opportunities abound in the world of Howren. Compared with the time when the 2 worlds of Howren and Wilderness were connected and opened, more visions are happening. Just talking about Liuxia continent, a remnant cave from ancient times has appeared recently. If it is not the Jade Pu realm, there is no way to participate in the fight. Earth immortals and their ilk dare to wade through the muddy water, and even a tooth sacrifice is not enough. It is said that Jinghao, the Taibao of the Qing Palace, traveled to other continents this time in order to secretly seek help from a strong arm to stabilize the Tianyu cave. The dignified leader of Izhou Mountain did not hesitate to lower his status and hook up with the monks on the top of Bizhou Mountain. It is obvious that Jinghao is determined to win this site. A cold voice sounded melodiously, "There are roughly 3 types of ancient contracts. We are not masters and servants. You and I are just equal hosts and guests. In my opinion, you are just like a hut. I will help you. You came from an unknown royal family hostage to have this opportunity just 100 years ago. It is an opportunity that you never dared to think of before. In terms of accommodation expenses, I have already given you enough money. Gao Yi, you should not push yourself too far. I couldn't wish for more. Gao Yi put his fists on his knees, his eyes were hot, and he suddenly started to curse, calling him a prostitute and a slut. I will sleep with you sooner or later. But the other party remained the same, indifferent, and regarded his foul language and loud curses as nothing more than the chirping of cicadas in the countryside. Gao Yi said, "You people who have achieved Taoism, do you really have no emotions or desires at all? If you need to pay this price to achieve Taoism and immortality, what is the meaning of immortality?" Probably because these words aroused the other party's desire to speak, a woman in a white dress with a sword on her back appeared out of thin air outside the door. She had an extremely cold appearance. She was a female ghost that Gao Yi met when he was traveling in Huangmao Mountain when he was young. In the sky, there is a 6-foot-long golden body, showing the appearance of heaven and man. The shapes that appear are flawless and pure gold. All we know is that her surname is Zheng, and her specific level is unknown, but her swordsmanship is extremely high. She helped Gao Yi secretly several times when he was in danger or even died. When Gao Yi first started practicing Taoism, he mistakenly thought that she was an earth fairy ghost. When he became an earth fairy, he guessed that she might be a legendary Jade Pure Realm ghost fairy. Now when Gao Yi himself is a Yupu realm ghost, then he guessed that she was at least in the immortal realm. Gao Yi didn't know if he became an immortal in the future, would she still be in a higher realm than him? She looked towards a certain direction in the void, her expression dark and unclear, and said, "There are 4 of them, 2 of them sword immortals are in the same realm as me. But if I really want to take action, I'm afraid I can only defeat that young golden elixir sword build." Gao Yi fell back and fell to the ground. I don't know why, just looking at him has consumed all my energy. I have never encountered such a strange thing in my life. She smiled and said, "In your lifetime? How many years is it?" Gao Yi remained silent. She leaned against the door, with her back to Gao Yi inside the house. Now that I know why he wants to meddle in his own business, why did I avoid them? Gao Yi said, "You said you once stopped at Daishin Mountain." She looked sad and murmured, "Don't mention the past anymore. After the founders of the 3 religions dispersed, all kinds of gods, ghosts, strange and ancient immortals sprung up like bamboo shoots after a rain, one after another. Successfully evading the disaster, getting out of the disaster, waiting for the opportunity, and finally the sky will clear up after the rain and the sun will shine again. The female ghost sword fairy surnamed Zheng hidden in Gao Yi's mind is just one of them. She once made an agreement with an old friend. It didn't require any oath, it was just a gentleman's agreement. As a result, he broke the appointment. But to be precise, she broke the promise first. It turned out that he had indeed reminded her not to try Hadao when they were saying goodbye at Daoxuanshan. She had indeed endured it for many years, but finally couldn't hold it in any longer and claimed to believe in Tao but not in evil. As a result, Hadao failed. Failed every time and lost his body. Perhaps this is doomed. The change of heaven and earth is called a great calamity. In this calamity, everyone has his own calamity. Gao Yi said, "What should I say now?" She sighed faintly, "If you can get the recognition of a certain sword vein here, I will help you fight for a glimmer of hope in the avenue. It's time for Liuxia Continent, Jianghu and others to give up their positions." Gao Yi asked, "What about you?" She said, "When you have accumulated enough external skills, you can leave your house and fly up in the daytime, and then we can go our separate ways. As for the cave heaven ruins that are the foundation of enlightenment, as long as Qin Qinglu doesn't take action, she actually has a good chance of winning. It's just that there is no need to tell Gao Yi about this kind of thing, lest he become arrogant and blindly exaggerate, which will lead to bad things. Right now, one sword instantly cut through 2 heaven and earth restrictions. This sword light cuts open from the outside to the inside, but opens the door from the inside to the outside. A man in a green shirt with a sword on his back walked out from that door and laughed at himself. "I no longer want to be a hidden official, but I want to do the work of a criminal official." Chen Pingan finally understood why Li Xing wanted him to come here. Is it to help the Confucian temple to remind her a few words not to cross the line in future actions? The woman in the white dress carrying a sword frowned slightly. Gao Yi was horrified and stood up in a hurry. Next to Chen Pingan, a person appeared who had been hiding here for a long time. She was a slender and beautiful woman. Her appearance was not inferior to that of the woman in the white dress. Bai Jing's terrifying talent is not only in sword refining, but also in all aspects. Perverted and unreasonable. According to the old blind man, if it weren't for some kind of jealousy, she would have been able to join the Tao a long time ago. In ancient times, under the 14th realm, sword cultivator Bai Jing was indeed more invincible than Xiaomo. Bai Jing smiled and said, "Does this girl have a Taoist nickname? Can you tell me?" The woman in the white dress looked cold and didn't say a word. Qin Pingan explained, "If I am not mistaken, the senior in front of me is called Jing Dan, and she has no Taoist name. It is said that she learned swordsmanship from Yuanvi. Her swordsmanship was as famous as the man who killed the dragon. Jing Dan learned Tao sincerely, get its essence, understand the art of hand-to-hand combat, have both short and long-term skills, be strong internally with spirit, externally spread the weather, and have sword energy that cuts through the clouds." Jing Dan was slightly surprised, nodded and said, "Mr. Qin is so complimentary." Qin Pingan said, "Sheng Li hopes that seniors will not violate the rules in the future." Jing Dan nodded and said, "The sage is here and the rules are here." Qin Pingan didn't say much. "Anyway, I have already helped deliver the message." Bai Jing grinned and said, "Listen to me, are you saying that the young master is going to rebel now that he's gone?" Jing Dan smiled and said, "It's senior's business what you want to think. If it weren't for the fact that there was just a mind here and no body, Gaoyi would probably be sweating profusely." Qin Pingan joked, "Gao Jianxian, are you nervous?" Gaoyi had a dark face. One wave comes after another. Someone stepped into this forbidden area, but it was still like entering a deserted land. "Zheng Dan, Baidi City is short of a man, are you interested?" Zheng Dan bowed to the visitor with his hands folded and said without hesitation, "I am willing to follow Mr. Zheng to practice the great path." Zheng Juzhong nodded and said, "When the affairs of Liuxia continent are over and the debts with Gaoyi are settled, you will go to Baidi City to guard the gate." Gaoyi's mood was extremely complicated. He just looked at the man in the green shirt again. His surname was Qin. "Are you nervous?" Zheng Juzhong asked with a smile. "Mr. Qin, do you want to go to Baidi City to see it? Otherwise, when you pass by the Middle-earth divine continent in the future, Baidi City has been closed. It is uncertain when it will reopen." Qin Pingan shook his head, "We have to go back to Aquarius continent." Zheng Juzhong nodded and said, "Well, see you later." Before leaving, Zheng Juzhong looked at Bai Jing with a smile. "Fellow Taoist Bai Jing, as long as you are willing to kill strangers, you can escape the disaster and join the Tao." Qin Pingan's face was expressionless. Bai Jing grinned and said, "When I was in retreat with the old blind man I thought of it, but this path of harmony is a bit inferior. What do you mean?" Zheng Juzhong said, "It's a pity. Since it was destined that all Taoists can be killed, and there is nothing and no one in the world that cannot be killed, all the swords that have been cut to the world are broken swords, and there are no more swordsmen in the world. Bai Jing has a chance to be among the 5 realms." Bai Jing pursed his lips. Zheng Juzhong smiled and said, "Am a poor person on the road? Why should I deceive myself? Showing others the appearance of a girl in a mink hat is to first cut off one's own mind, then cut off the strangers in the heart 14 first, and then cut off the sword in the world with the sword. On the road, if I pray for 15 more times, why do I regret it when things come to an end?" Bai Jing wrinkled his face, feeling extremely aggrieved. He held the back of his head with both hands, then raised his head high and looked into the distance. "I don't know how to be sad in the first place. I'm most afraid of seeing tenderness. Once you have seen it, you will be reluctant to part with it." Zheng Juzhong nodded and said, "Such Bai Jing is Bai Jing. She is indeed the female cultivator who took the lead in the battle to reach heaven." Qin Pingan was stunned when he heard this and turned to look at Bai Jing. The first woman to reach heaven? This was the first time he heard about this. In the past, I had only heard that in the battle to reach the sky, it was the first Taoist priest in the world who opened the way to the sky, and the first male monk to enter the gate was the leader of the swordsmanship who was also one of the top 10 heroes in ancient times. Bai Jing said calmly, "From the first day I practiced sword practice in Taoism, I made a vow to myself that I would use my non-god body to look down on the sky and the earth." Zheng Juzhong said goodbye with a smile and left. No wonder Zhu Lian said to Xiao Mo on the mountain, "Have you ever seen a girl more proud than Xiego?" Qin Pingan was silent for a moment and said from his heart, "Thank you Go, does Xiao Mo know these past events?" Bai Jing has returned to normal, laughing and saying, "You know, I talked to him about everything." Qin Pingan held it in for a long time and couldn't help cursing, "Damn it Xiaoma you fool." Bai Jing complained, "You're not allowed to say that about Xiao Mo." Qin Pingan was speechless. The next moment he had returned to Aquarius continent and was in Yongjia County, the capital of Yushuan Kingdom. Perhaps pride is like a high city, and the person you like will walk on top of the city with pride at your feet. Sword of Coming Chapter 1223. Chapter 1223. As if nothing happened, the sky and the earth are clear and bright, washing away the old dust. Qin Pingan held an oil paper umbrella under his arm and slowly walked towards the small rented house. Although he was seriously injured, his weight was relieved. Bypassing the familiar Yamen shrine, when he used to run a fortune-telling stall and work as a Taoist priest, Qin Pingan often climbed over the wall to watch the intrigues of the subordinate officials and study their words. Using his own methods, Qin Pingan found Gu Kan's traces. Qin Pingan said something to his heart and gave Gu Kan an address, agreeing to meet there. Of course, earth immortals and monks in the upper 5 realms often have ways to cover up the weather. Gu Kan did it deliberately because he was worried that Qin Pingan would miss him. Qin Pingan walked into a Qianshui alley familiar with the road. 3 practitioners came towards him from a distance. Among them was a strong man with arms as long as his knees. He was leaning on the package and was speaking in a low voice to comfort a man with a handsome face next to him. The young man with a crown of jade but a dejected expression said, "Hong Tu, so what if you are no longer a boy? Although you cannot be as extraordinary as the ancient swordsman and learn how to take the head with the flying sword of the founder, you still have to be invincible in the world and become famous in the world. Only when you are in a good position. Don't belittle yourself and become discouraged, which is a waste of time and material." The young man nodded dully, not knowing whether he heard it or whether it was going in one ear and out the other. Seeing the green-shirt figure at the corner of the alley, the man glanced quickly. He didn't take it too seriously. He just lowered his voice and said a few words to the young man named Hong Tuesday. Then he turned to look at the man with both hands. The young woman who was dancing squares with her feet together, with fresh bones and a charming face, immediately behaved herself when she saw her uncle looking at her. Then the man turned around and continued to talk to them. "This time, the master orders you to follow me down the mountain and travel. I traveled 1,000,000 miles across the 7 kingdoms before I could return to my sect. I hope you understand the principle that there are people outside the mountains and there are people outside the mountains. You must know that there are countless strange people and strangers buried in the dust of the world. Often it is only because of the fate that the law has not arrived, and the real person does not show his face, or we pass each other in the busy city, or we don't know each other across the street." What a coincidence. The woman raised her eyebrows and couldn't help but smile. "Uncle Master, there is someone walking away with a sword in front of me. Is he what Uncle Master calls an expert?" There are some things a man should not say out loud. This time he left the sect and gained experience in the world of mortals. First of all, it was to let Hong Tuzan relax and stop being so lifeless. He always felt that he could not practice the magic of the immortal family, so he felt despair, which prompted him to make several things in the world. A chivalrous act to help him regain his morale. Furthermore, it was to let the direct disciple who was secretly appointed as the successor by the master behind her to see more of the world, mainly to come to a certain Taoist temple in the capital of Yuxuan Kingdom to help her find an opportunity to become an immortal. It turns out that there are 3 natural red lines on her eyebrows in heaven, which are the so-called signs on the mountain that the killing calamity is too severe. Therefore, she needs to be trained in the world of mortals for a few years to lose all the evil spirits and learn a principle of concealing one's edge. Study my immortal method. All in all, the purpose is to let her know that comparison is far from enough, and to make Hong to feel that comparison is more than enough. The leader cannot be said to have bad intentions. Seeing that there was still a long distance between him and the guest in green shirt, the man still used the secret method of gathering sound to form a line, which was not passed down by his master, and gave instructions to the 2 juniors. "Bao Shu, Hong Tu, let's travel the rivers and lakes when you meet a stranger for the first time. It depends on the level of the person's skills and martial arts skills. It will be easy for those who meet him but not for those who are difficult. Remember to pay extra attention to their breathing and footsteps. For example, the person in front of you does have some martial arts skills. It's just that his face is slightly pale, his breathing is slightly stagnant, the clarity and turbidity are different, and the force of each step landing is uneven. It can be seen that he had worked hard originally, but his spirit was probably a little weaker due to excessive drinking and sex." Qin Pingan had no choice but to pretend not to hear this comment. The young woman named Bao Shu in the team is indeed suitable for practicing Taoism. It is indeed a piece of jade with the qualifications of an earthly immortal. They probably all came into being at the right time. Such characters are now found in every corner of the world. Some major sects are busy. Nian Ganlang of the Punishment Department had secretly sent more manpower to Aquarius Continent and even Tongya Continent to look for all kinds of Taoist embryos. The 16 geniuses sent to Luapa Mountain by the Dali Imperial Court have already taken the military ferry and will soon arrive at Nyojiao Ferry. The woman asked, "Uncle Gao, did I hear Master he say that there are immortal ferry crossings, inns and ferries in the world? As long as someone finds the exact address, they will see all the monks and qi refining gods?" The man smiled and said, "To put it lightly, it's not that easy to meet. You, Master, he just accidentally met a group of qi refiners in the deserted mountain temple. I heard from the Master that since ancient times, there have been land gods and goddesses who have seen the dragon but never seen the tail. When they first learned Taoism, they were often ordered by the sect master to teach them to make an oath. They should not show their holiness casually in front of the common people, and they should not show up in the mountains. You should not use your immortality skills outside the mountains to seek fame in the world of mortals, or be greedy for worldly wealth, so as not to mislead your disciples and make them mistakenly think that refining qi and cultivating the Tao is a smooth road or a shortcut. Let's just say that the founder of our sect, even though he was a genius, he still had to go through countless hardships. When his merits were perfected, he finally perfected a flying sword. Within 100 feet, the blue light was dazzling, and he could cut off the heads of thieves and bandits at will. Like searching a bag to retrieve an object, it is easy to reverse the palm, which is already the state of the ancient swordsman. More than 200 years ago, Lao Huang experienced that a fairy mansion in the mountains with numerous fairy sites in local chronicles gradually turned into a martial arts sect that only taught fists and kicks. The few volumes of Taoism left by the founder can no longer be studied by anyone except the current leaders. Regardless of whether he has a rich family background or a master in the mountains, he is afraid that it will become an old trend. The woman looked longingly and said, "Uncle Gao, I heard that there is a Taoist priest named Wu in the capital. He is proficient in numerology and is very accurate in fortune-telling. He has the reputation of being an ironclad god. His fortune-telling stall is nearby. Shall we go and have a look?" The man smiled and said, "The person who shows his appearance in the market is not a real person, but it is unlikely that he is a god. When we go to Chongyang Temple, if you are still free, you can go to the stall and try your luck. If that person is really a strange person who is playing games in the world of mortals. Strangers are what you should be born into." In an alley, the two parties approached. Not to mention the legendary people who cultivated Taoism and became immortals. No matter how spiritual they are, they never feel sleepy. Even the people who practice martial arts and have a restrained spirit should not be so sleepy and drowsy during the day. The man looked at the other party and felt very sorry, but he did not forget to take advantage of every opportunity and warn the two juniors. He gathered his voice and said, "The founder of our sect has a saying, wine, sex, wealth and material possessions can make people feel exhausted day and night. The peaceful family of the immortals can lead to the path to enlightenment. Sex and between men and women are the worst mistake for immortality. This person is light-footed and extremely sleepy. If the head brother is here, all he needs to do is recite the incantation, take a sip of talisman water and spray it on his face. This will free you from the entanglement of the Sandman's nightmare and restore your mind to fullness. If you can learn to exercise restraint in the future, this person's path to martial arts will surely not stop here." The two sides passed each other. After walking out for more than 10 steps, Bao Shu laughed in a low voice. "Master is famous for his kind-heartedness. According to his temper, he will definitely stop and have a good chat with this person." People of the same generation as the head, except her master Uncle Gao Zhu, privately said that her master was a good gentleman. If you encounter injustice outside the mountains, take care of it. If you encounter an unfortunate person in the world, help him. This has affected the development of the sect and his own practice a lot, but the leader always says that suffering is a blessing. Not long after she came to the mountain, she had overheard some harsh words in the past few years, saying that the leader was too soft-hearted, weak in Taoism and not like a Taoist, which was why he had no academic ability but no Taoist power. Deep down in her heart, she felt that these statements were correct. A person who practices Taoism must look like a person among gods and immortals. He should not put a clear Taoist heart that should be radiant in the mire and soil his own spirit. Hong Tu didn't know whether it was due to some mistake or a blessing in his heart. He suddenly turned his head and happened to see the man in blue shirt turning his head and looking towards him with a sword on his back. He looked at him. I heard a strange voice say, "If you have a leisurely time, young hero, you can look for Taoist with stall and figure out your future. It's very effective and the price is fair. I'm sure you won't waste your money." Hong Tu was shocked in his heart. He saw the other person pointing at his ear, perhaps indicating the tip of his ear. He happened to overhear their conversation and talked about the fortune-telling stall. Hong Tu turned around and asked hurriedly, "Senior, please give me some advice. If someone learns martial arts late and is not a child, can he really become a martial arts master?" However, he saw the inconspicuous man in green clothes using a ladder-like technique that resembled a light soaring technique. His feet were overlapping each other in the air, and in an instant his figure was higher than the eaves of the alley and disappeared. Traces. When Bao Shu heard the movement behind her, she turned around and took a look. She only saw the green corner of her clothes. She was not surprised and asked, "Uncle, are you a master?" The man didn't feel that he had made a mistake and said with a smile, "The movement is not small, it is very high." Qin Pingan sat on a roof, thought for a while, and looked in the direction of Jiao Mountain, without bothering Ma Kexuan's few disciples who were not yet mature. Repaying kindness with kindness and repaying with hatred is a matter of course. It is not only a matter of one's own family but also a matter of the whole world. As for whether that woman, who has quite good bones and is suitable for practicing Taoism in the mountains, can become a true Taoist, it is hard to say. Not to boast, if Cin Yuanji had not met Zhu Lian and Jiang Chu had not entered Luolu Mountain, he would probably have disappeared from the crowd. Forced to cheer up, Qin Pingan chose a secluded alley and fell to the ground. It had been a long time since he felt like he wanted to take a long nap until he was full. Gu Kan and his party were walking through the streets in Yongjia County. Imperial Master Huang Lai didn't know anything about it. It was his maid Gu Lingxiu who helped ask for directions before they found a quiet alley. Outside the door of the small house, apart from Qin Pingan who was squatting on the steps with his hands in sleeves, there were also a group of unfamiliar faces standing, apparently chatting. Qin Pingan looked a little sluggish and he was clearly seriously injured. This familiar scene made Gu Kan's face darken. Gu Kan walked forward slowly, asking for the result with his eyes. Qin Pingan said in his heart, "It's okay, it's an acceptable price. The night travel sword is broken, and there is still a natal robe that needs to be refined and mended. Dozens of less important Qi palaces have lost their foundation and need to be repaired. Repair. But it is not without benefits. In the long run it will definitely not be a loss. I just took this opportunity. Ningyao is right. Yu Pu pursues truth and is more pragmatic. When an immortal ascends to ascension except for the last step before reaching the bottleneck of the immortal realm, monks are more pragmatic. What's more, Qin Pingan's current path to Taoism, after passing the biggest hurdle of Yuan Ying's return to Yu Pu, could not be simpler. It's nothing more than sword refining. When it comes to sword refining it's even simpler. It's just eating gold, fine copper coins and dragon-slaying stones. Qin Pingan has already made arrangements for gold and copper coins. He will discuss with the Song family in Dali and do business with the Luzhou Luomahi Lu family in Sanlang Temple in Beiju. If a small amount adds up to a big sum, there are always ways to do it. Let's go. According to Zheng Zhezhong's estimate at the time, if Qin Pingan only needs to eat another 1,500 gold coins, Jing Zhongyue can be promoted to the rank of Jinkoyu. With the number of flying swords differentiated, there is hope. Raising it to 800,000. If he is more optimistic, Qin Pingan can even think about the number of millions. So the real difficulty is still the dragon-slaying stone. Gold and copper coins can be considered priceless but marketless, but the dragon-slaying stone is a typical priceless and marketless one. Anyone who gets it can just cover it up, hide it, and never sell others. So at the top of Jilin Peak, even Yu Shen personally helped to make the matchmaking, but he couldn't guarantee that he would be able to help find the seller. Qin Pingan wanted to use this to refine the sword in the cage, sharpen the sword's edge, and improve his rank. One can imagine how difficult it is. Gu Kan stared at him blankly. Are you sure that Ma's family has been eradicated? Qin Pingan changed the subject. I took a temporary trip to the Sword Qi Great Wall and met your master. We chatted for a few words. Baidi City will be closed soon. He invited a female sword immortal named Zheng Dan. Although the person who serves as Yen is a ghost fairy, her swordsmanship is very high and she has a great background. Her swordsmanship inheritance has been alongside Zhou Shenxi's Tsuqing lineage in recent times. Gu Kan nodded. The sword cultivator who was able to be personally invited by Zheng Juzhong to serve as a shaman must have a strong Taoist practice. Gu Kan said from the bottom of her heart, the injury is serious. After returning to Luapa Mountain, do you need to stay in seclusion for a period of time? Qin Pingan said, it doesn't prevent me from being the best man for Lu Xianyang. Gu Kan said, if it doesn't work, Let Lu Xianying postpone the wedding banquet. Chen Pingan looked straight at Gukan. Gukan said helplessly, joking, teasing, making a joke, seriously. I'm not worried that you will harm your Taoism. If something impedes your Taoism, he'll have a few light words to help you relieve your boredom. Chen Pingan slowly stood up and introduced them one by one. I don't want you to work in vain. Let me introduce you. My pseudonym is Pulu, my real name is Su Fu, I am in the nascent soul realm, and there is little chance of breaking through. Guan Piao, ghost cultivator, golden core realm, breaking through the realm is not difficult. Shin Ku, who is the bottleneck of the 7th realm of martial arts, can immediately reach the far-traveling realm. I have already negotiated with them. As long as you are willing to recruit, they can go to your side. Just take care of the food, whether they will give you a salary or not. It depends on your mood. These former masters, who were brought out of Ma Mansion by Chen Pingan, were either old gods or great masters. They had each had a meal before. The old woman suffered a fire torture, and the ghost spy got a solid meal. Grandmaster Shen's situation was even worse. All in all, he was miserable to the point that it was unbearable to look back. Now, just thinking about it makes their hearts tremble. If Chen Jianxian hadn't asked them to follow him and said that he had an opportunity to offer, the old woman would have thought of running away. Not to mention Yu Shenghua, she would have thought of traveling to other continents. As for Guanqi, he also had thoughts of returning to his homeland, and Shin Ku wanted to find a clean place in the wilderness. At least for a year and a half, the old martial artist didn't want to be seen again. Gukan remained silent. I'm here to help. Can you please help me? I'm just watching from the sidelines, and in the end you're going to talk to me about remuneration? If it were anyone else, Gukan would probably just say, I don't accept waste. Chen Pingan raised his hand and patted Gukan's shoulder gently. You, a new sect leader who comes from the Baidi City genealogy, should I introduce you to some descendants of famous families and noble men with strict ancestral precepts? Are we above board with you every day? What's more, this group of people have just suffered a lot and are the most honest. Your new sect can use it. Their realm is not high, but they are all very thoughtful. They know how to behave and are willing to do things. Gukan glanced at Chen Pingan without saying anything. He turned to look at those few people. He was now very polite in dealing with others. He cupped his fists and smiled and said, Nice to meet you. My family's fortune is not big now. If I can get 3, it is a blessing for the younger generation to have an elder to help them. Although I don't know the identity of the young man in scholar's shirt in front of me, as long as he is Qin Jiangxian's friend, how different his identity can be. Therefore, the 3 of them all looked flattered and returned the favor one after another. In fact, 1 nascent soul, 1 golden pill, plus a 7th realm martial artist who is about to enter the far-traveling realm, is quite good. Just like the number 3 person who founded a sect in any continent, as long as he doesn't compare with the time-honored sects, his reputation is not small. Let's just say that a few decades ago in Shujian Lake, Lu Zimeo's Xianxia Island had almost the same kind of wealth? Gu Lingyan curled his lips. Good luck to these 3. After entering the Sun's sect and going out, there is an extra amulet. After all, the authentic ancestral court of the sect is the Baidi City and Zhengjuzhong. Beating a dog depends on the owner. Even if the 3 of them hit a hard nail, the sect leader Gukan doesn't have enough face, so does Zhengjuzhong have enough face? As the people recommended by Chen Pingan personally, they were like another life-saving talisman for the sect leader Gukan. Gukan introduced Huang Lai, who had just been recruited by his side. Huang Lai, he has just resigned from the post of national advisor. Chen Pingan clasped his fists and said with a smile, I have met Senior Huang. Huang Lai looked solemn and returned the courtesy solemnly. How can a little golden elixir be worthy of the title of senior? If you practice Taoism and live forever, those who have mastered it are the first. I have met Mr. Qin. Chen Pingan laughed dumbly. Gu Lingyan couldn't help but sneer. Oh hey, I can help you give a unique insight to the word sir. Mr. Huang is so good at flattering others, no wonder he can become a national master. Chen Pingan asked, where are the others? Now that Gukan is here, Lu Xianying is definitely indispensable. Gukan smiled and said, this guy went to Jinwu Mountain to block the door. Chen Pingan rubbed his eyebrows. Gukan said, let me state in advance that it was his idea for us to come to Xuanhuan to meet together this time. I can only be a helper. Chen Pingan said angrily, you are loyal. Gukan chuckled and said, I'm used to selling him. Chen Pingan is used to it. Gukan said, Pei Qian is here too and is currently at the Qinghuang Temple in the capital. Before Chen Pingan could say anything, Gukan said first, it's Lu Xianying's intention. Seeing that Chen Pingan still wanted to talk, Gukan, who was familiar with his temperament, immediately asked a key question from the bottom of his heart. What kind of crimes did they suffer in Ma Mansion? They are almost reduced to walking zombies who are just dragged by the thread of soul. It's a mess if I don't find a few bottles of panacea for them, and quickly stabilize their minds and souls, the sequelae will be too great. Gu Ken is a bystander and his realm and master's biography are all there. On the other hand, Pu Lu and several insiders are not aware of their current dangerous situation. Chen Pingan roughly explained, except for the relatively good spying on ghosts, the other two are not fuel-efficient lamps. I helped them tailor several small methods, setting up minefields and giving them fire punishments. The warriors passed the test and used some tricks. Discipline. It's good that you don't miss it when you're passing by, but it's good that you give it a small punishment or a big warning if you bump into it. Guken couldn't help but laugh and gloated, it's okay if Shinku survives. After all, he's a martial artist. What about Pu Lu and Guan Piao? Even if the old woman had no chance to join Yupu in the first place, the problem is that she now has a great opportunity. She dares to retreat, dare to break through the realm, dare to face her inner demons? Qin Pingan said, in the future, as long as they hope to break through seclusion, if you write a letter, I will help them. Cut off all their memories as if they have never seen me, and it will not hurt their Dao roots. It just cleared the memory. Guken remained silent with complicated eyes. Qin Pingan laughed at himself and said, comparing me with Mr. Zheng? Can we compare? You think so highly of a immortal realm monk, and insult a 14th realm mentor who wants to establish a religion and call himself an ancestor? Guken didn't feel much about the words, establishing a religion and claiming to be his ancestor. He seemed to have expected it. Hearing this, his heart was not disturbed. Instead, he felt about the words, immortal realm? Qin Pingan stretched out his hand to hold down Guken's head. I am both an immortal and a sect leader. Lu Xianying is still a sect leader after all. You are nothing like that. You only have a jade purity realm next to you. What can you do? Guken was speechless. Qin Pingan smiled and said, this is what I call joking. After entering the house, the old women looked around. In fact, there was nothing to see in the palm-sized land. They were very surprised. Is this where Qin Jianxian settled in the capital? Wouldn't it be too shabby? But after they thought about it, they were quickly relieved. How could the great sword immortal's actions be judged by common sense? Qin Pingan smiled and said, diligence is a money tree, frugality is a cornucopia. The hall is simple and simple, mainly just an 8 immortals table. Qin Pingan invited everyone to sit down and said, the rented place does not provide good hospitality, and we serve tea instead of wine. Sensing the gesture from Gu Kan's eyes, Gu Lingyan immediately went to boil water. There was no one outside the house, so Qin Pingan asked, have you figured out the address? Gu Kan said, let's just choose Fuyazu. There is a place. I have personally inspected it before and it's okay. But I plan to go to Fuyazu again and take a look. Maybe there is a better place. Son, I can't tell you the exact location now. Qin Pingan nodded and said, as long as you have decided on Fuyao Island, there is no need to be too anxious. Take your time. Gu Kan said, there may not be a ceremony. Qin Pingan smiled and said, even if there is a ceremony, I may not be invited to go. Gu Kan said, I know you are busy, so you can only go to Qingxing country, not Fuyao continent. Except for Gu Lingyan, who knew the basics, the others were all human beings, and they immediately tasted the aftertaste. Is this a sign of superiority? What's the relationship between the two of them? He became more and more curious about the identity of the young man in Confucian shirt. Who can talk to Qin Jianxian so casually? Qin Pingan made up for his past mistakes, and said, since I have chosen Fuyazu, I will introduce someone to you in the future. Gu Kan said, if it's someone who came out of the summer palace, there's no need. He's destined to not be able to pee in a pot. Qin Pingan smiled and said, this man is known as the smartest emperor in the history of Fuyao continent. I always feel that this guy has hidden wealth somewhere in his homeland. Because Gu Kan had stayed in Fuyazu for a while, he immediately guessed the identity of the other party and asked tentatively, is it the one who guards against his son better than outsiders? Qin Pingan nodded and said, that's him. Now that I'm living with Zhong Kue, I will be free one day sooner or later. You two probably have a good temper. Gu Kan smiled and said, if it's him and he wants to be the chief worshipper, he'll do it. Qin Pingan said, let's wait until you meet in person. Let's see if we hit it off first. Gu Kan said with a smile, if I beat him to death, he won't go to Luoluo Mountain. If I beat him to death, he would still be willing to follow me. Qin Pingan chuckled and said, are you quite proud? You're showing off to me. Gukin was overjoyed. Qin Pingan took a long breath. If there was a chair to sit on, he would want to sleep on it. Gukin remembered something and asked, "Do you know there is a Chongyang temple here?" Qin Pingan nodded and said, "It was called alchemy in ancient times. It is a geomantic treasure place where Tao Qi is condensed. I passed by it a few times and did not go in to investigate further. Just by looking at the Qi, I could roughly tell that he was a Taoist priest who was proficient in fire magic. He was in Chongyang Temple. The person who builds the furnace to refine the water elixir is probably a stranger who dares to refine both the inner and outer elixirs. I guess the master's realm may not be very high, but the power of the outer elixir is quite high. Why, have we met before? The few people I met in Tianshui Hadong just now seem to be going to Chongyang to seek immortality. There are many Taoist legal systems, only the outer alchemy sect and the inner alchemy sect. At the level of the golden elixir there is a dividing line. Under the golden elixir, the outer elixir becomes popular. Seeking external things to strengthen oneself often leads to rapid breakthroughs. As for the outer elixir above the golden elixir, although it will not become useless, it is not very important. However, there are exceptions. On the side of Qingming Tianxia, there are several Dharma veins along with the outer elixir that can directly lead to ascension. Over in Tongyi's Hao, Lu Yong's Qinghu Palace belongs to the typical Taoist Huaidan lineage. Gukin said, "I just met him and chatted for a few words. The master of the temple seems to be a golden elixir immortal. He is very courageous and dares to call himself Huelo." Qin Pingan laughed it off. Gu Lingyan said softly, "It's not like Qingming Tianxia. There is only one Taoist name and you can't take it without permission. It's a unique one and it's as valuable as the road of Hadao. In Haoran Tianxia, besides the genealogy monks, there are also Taoist names. It's not just random." Qin Pingan nodded. Gukin stopped talking about the matter, changed the subject and asked, "Would you like me to use the 3-mountain talisman to go to Jianghu Mountain and call Lu Xianyang over?" Qin Pingan nodded and said, "Then you go and come back quickly, I will be lazy and wait for you here." Lu Xianyang once overturned Lu Chen's fortune-telling stall and clamored to beat him every time he saw him. In the past he didn't know the identity of the Taoist priest with the lotus crown, so he wasn't afraid. Now even though he knew it was Lu Chen, Lu Xianyang was still not afraid at all. After Gukin left, Qin Pingan took out a talisman from his sleeve, turned it into a stream of colors and quickly swept out of the house. When the talisman landed on the ground, it was Wu Di, a middle-aged Taoist who was already in Chongyang Temple. Outside the wall. The main reason is that he is worried that Gukin is inadvertently involved in some kind of cause and effect. Qin Pingan needs to find out and see it with his own eyes before he can rest assured. Besides, when he met those Shanjiao people in the Tianshui Hadong, Qin Pingan felt that this matter could be big or small. According to his custom, he still wanted to see to believe. Gu Lingyan just pretended not to know the reason. The hometown is wild and there are no rules, but there is no shortage of pride. Because of the lack of calculation, the kind of life-or-death friendship might be more than Haoran's. But this was the first time she had seen such a relationship between Gu Kan and Qin Pingan. The old woman and several old members of the Ma family were still speculating on the identity of the young man in Confucian shirts. "Although I have been assigned a place, I will probably have to follow that young man to earn a living, but as long as I don't follow Mr. Qin to Luapa Mountain, that's fine." Before Gukin left, he glanced at Huang Lai. "You've knocked someone on me twice while I've been here. When I'm not here, if you still dare to act like this, I will accept you as a worshipper and then clean up the house on the same day. This kind of thing cannot be done by others, but I, Gukin, can do it very casually." Huang Lai seemed to feel guilty and quickly nodded in greeting. "Don't worry, I will never give Sect Master Gu another chance to misunderstand." Inside Chongyang Temple the scenery is quiet. In the setting sun, the red ochre water turns into paper, with patterns like runes, and the fish in the pond seem to be in a Taoist book, with the words "eatable gods" written in it. A solitary bird rushes into the waves, its shadow floating in the air. An old Taoist priest with a fluttering beard came up. Cheng Fengxian, who turned out to be the owner of this place, noticed something strange in the temple. The old Taoist counted the cause and effect and it was a mess. It was difficult to say good or bad for the time being, so he stopped his Taoist studies and walked out of the simple thatched hut. The old Taoist steps on the square steps, very majestic. What he saw was a middle-aged Taoist priest admiring the scenery by the water. I don't know if they are peers or fellow travelers. The old Taoist was not sure of the other party's intention for a moment. If the Taoist temple was closed all year round, there were no friends in the capital who came to visit, and no faithful men and women who came here to burn incense. So the other party either climbed over the wall uninvited or he's a Taoist who really has magical powers. He can shrink the earth's veins and move mountains and rivers thousands of miles away. Qing Fengxian looked around and came up with a guess. He asked with a smile, but the Taoist priest Wu who sets up a stall in Higher Lane in Yongjia County, Wuxinghua? Just by looking at the opponent's attire, one cannot tell which lineage of the mountain he belongs to. Qin Pingan nodded with a smile and said straight to the point, Wu Di, a poor Taoist, does not have a Taoist name. I just heard from a friend that Master Qingguan's Taoist name is Huilu. I have lived here for many days and passed by Guiguan several times. Because I didn't dare to disturb him, I didn't come to visit him. But today I heard that my friend mentioned Qing Jinren, and most of his words were filled with admiration for the master. I was afraid of missing a Taoist senior, so I had the courage to come here to talk about it. Qing Fengxian stroked his beard and smiled and said narrowly, How can I take my self-proclaimed Taoist title seriously? Isn't Taoist Wu Wu so frightened? Or does he regard this poor Taoist as a villain and plan to ask for reward from the county government? Qin Pingan said, The master of the temple is joking. Qing Fengxian was too lazy to talk around with this person. He was upright and was not afraid of slanting shadows. After all, good time was limited and he should not waste it in such vain and arrogant things. He said directly, People in the Ming dynasty don't tell secrets. I dare to ask Taoist Wu whether he came here to explore the secluded scenery and enjoy the scenery. Or should we discuss Taoism and weigh the weight of a poor Taoist? If we say that his colleagues are enemies, he lives in seclusion in Chongyang Temple, concentrates on refining elixirs, has 2 disciples and has nothing to do with the world. There is no reason to conflict with this fellow Taoist who is setting up a stall to make money. Qin Pingan smiled and said, I would like to ask, is the ancestor of Master Qingguan's family from the Lu Guan sect? Qing Fengxian was silent for a moment, then sighed deeply, showing a slightly sentimental look. I never thought that fellow Taoist Wu would still know about such ancient things. To be honest, Pindao did come from a branch of the Lu Guan sect, but it was not orthodox. It has the same origin but different flows. The source of water has long been gone. Withered, this branch of Pindao is in such a bleak situation now. In ancient times, real people emerged in large numbers. Among the Taoists in the world at that time, it was said that the Lu Guan school was the highest and the Donghua school was the largest. As for the Taoist tradition of the Lu Guan sect, in addition to being good at astronomy and divination, they are also proficient in the windhorn bird divination, and they are also extremely good at alchemy. Otherwise, it will not be able to stand as the highest. After Qin Pingan confirmed that what the other party said was true, he felt a little helpless. It turned out that the hidden connection like a fish lying on the bottom was not in Gu Qian, but in himself. The old master of the Donghai Taoist temple, the master of the Bixiao cave, secretly took care of the Tonggishao Jinding temple of the Loguan sect, and even asked Luo Luoshan and Jiang Shangzhen by name not to take action against Xuanhuan. The old temple owner gave away a quarter of the lotus root land in Lualu Mountain to pay off a debt? Do I need to repay an interest in Chongyang Temple first? I wonder who among those 3 people from before, going back further, would not be involved in a certain ancestor of the Lu Guan sect? Qin Pingan thought for a moment and then started to talk serious nonsense. Since Master Jing is willing to treat people with sincerity, Pindao can't pretend to be mysterious. There should be someone who reciprocates the truth and tell the truth. Pindao used to travel around the world when he was young. In his early years in Tong Yezhou by chance is somewhere in the north and has a deep connection with the tradition passed down by a certain lineage of the Loguan sect. Just like a plant planted, it is time for the flowers to bloom here, and the melons to ripen and fall. Qing Fengxian gave a slightly confused sound. He was obviously hesitant and didn't dare to believe it. Is there really such a good thing that fell from the sky? Qin Pingan continued, I am here in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom. The matter is over and I will continue to travel to other places soon. Over there in Zhugan Hudong Yongjia County, there is a ghost house that is rumored to be rumored, and there is a moxa hanging at the door. Grass, the viewer will know it when he goes over there and looks at the aura. The owner of the house is called Shui Rui. Although she looks like a ghost, she is dedicated to advocating Taoism and has a clear spirit. The poor Taoist has stayed here for several months. Have a close relationship with her and call each other Taoist friends. She has quite a personal friendship with Tong Xinjun of Xia, who's his Dajuan. It is because of her that the poor Taoist was lucky enough to meet Tong Xinjun in the house. Cheng Guanju is here after refining elixirs. You can take the time to go over and say that you and Wu Di are old friends. Cheng Fengxian pretended to be calm and was amazed in his heart. The Taoist friend in front of him was so blessed that he could actually have a relationship with that Lord Tong? This kind of thing, especially in the Huashan realm, you don't dare to talk nonsense and put gold on your face, otherwise are you really not afraid of being struck by lightning? In fact, Cheng Fengxian was not only surprised but also frightened. Just because his most important batch of elixirs was originally scheduled to be fired at noon during the Dragon Boat Festival this year. It was named wuxia fish in the Ancestral Elixir book, and it was a batch of elixirs. As long as the medicine is successful, no more, no less, there are only 2 pills, one is indispensable without one, and even more cannot be achieved with more. The 2 pills just divide the yin and yang. But the old Taoist was not sure about this, just because he was missing one of the most important medicinal materials, even though he had put all his efforts into choosing the site of Chongyang Temple as a cauldron, and found a noon couplet as the winning weapon. However, there is still a lack of vital alchemy items, which results in the alchemy furnace being unable to achieve the kind of water leakage described in the alchemy book even though the fire is being lit. If one could burn a piece of immortal mugwort, it would be like setting off a fire in a steamer and transporting it to the temple for years of water transport. Isn't it God's blessing? The reason why the old Taoist didn't look happy was that he didn't know the quality of the mugwort at the door of the ghost house. What is the firepower after burning? The old Taoist became more and more frightened and doubtful. Could it be that meeting the Taoist priest Wu Di today was due to a mysterious Taoist fate? If you really agree to what the other party said, it should bear fruit and come to fruition? Chen Pinggan's original intention was to first help the temple owner and Shui Rui to connect, so that the 2 parties could take care of each other and form a romantic relationship. If there are any difficulties in Chongyang Temple in the future, Shui Rui, Tong Wenchang, and Chen Pinggan will be able to weigh in on whether to help and how to help. Chen Pinggan was also surprised and asked seemingly casually, Pindao once met a poor young man from a foreign country named Bai Yun. He and his grandfather used to sell pictures of spring cows together. Passing by the stall, Pindao helped him make a prediction. He was I wonder if Master Jing has ever seen this young man with the xuanhuan Dharma? Cheng Fengxian shook his head, I never leave home and have never seen this young man. But the old Taoist quickly added, Pindo's 2 disciples occasionally go shopping in the market, so they might have seen this person. Chen Pinggan looked as usual and said with a smile, I originally thought that this fate of the immortal family would fall on Guanju Cheng and Chongyang Guan, but now it seems that may not be the case. This is the advantage of having a high level, and the secret words in the hearts of others are as loud as thunder. The mugwort hanging at the door was given to Shui Rui by Lu Qin before, so that Chen Pinggan's fight with Ma Kuxuan would not make too much noise and accidentally hurt her soul as a ghost. Lu Qin came to Howren this time, and he was busy looking for the noon fish that was hard to catch for the gods, which was the later young Ningji and now Chen Pinggan's direct disciple. Could it be that according to the original context, Ningji, who had not been discovered by Lu Qin and Chen Pinggan, would enter this Chongyang temple, and the young man would gain the favor of Cheng Fengxian, worship him as his teacher and step by step, eventually embark on the path of spiritual cultivation? Chen Pinggan laughed dumbly. Does this count as cutting off half measures and stealing the opponent's proud disciple? Did Lu Qin reach this level long ago and wanted to use that mugwort as compensation to indirectly help the old Taoist achieve perfection in alchemy? To settle a cause and effect? It seems that next time I travel to the Middle-earth Divine Continent, in addition to the Tianshi Mansion in Longhu Mountain, if I have the chance, I will also go to the Lu family in Middle-earth to borrow books and read. Chen Pinggan smiled and said, It won't hinder the owner of the temple from entertaining guests. The old Taoist asked in confusion, Why do fellow Taoists come to say this? People of the Taoist sect are most particular about collecting the spirit, and will not easily release their spiritual consciousness. According to legend, only the Taoist sect who has stepped into the state of sensing between heaven and man cannot move the mind, but can communicate with the mind and be able to sense the outside world. The slightest change between heaven and earth. At this time, a tall but handsome young Taoist boy ran quickly to the waterside, slapped his head and panted, Master Jing, we have another visitor. Cheng Fengxian smiled and praised, Wu Daoyu is really a prophet of the future. Perhaps because he noticed the playful look in Taoist Master Wu's eyes, the old Taoist felt a little ashamed. The food in his Taoist temple was indeed not full of oil and water on weekdays. The old Taoist priest likes purity, and while refining alchemy, he is most afraid of the intrusion of the mortal world. Taoist temples are closed all year round to thank guests. They cannot steal or rob, and they are not willing to cheat and deceive. They have no side wealth, so how can they get extra money? Besides, it is difficult to practice Taoism. How can it be what a blessing? Although these two disciples have ordinary qualifications and cannot be considered geniuses, since Qing Fengxian has accepted them as registered disciples, in addition to following his own fate, he still has high hopes for them. Not only is the Taoist temple missing 2 fire-burning Taoist boys, it's so simple to do chores, and the old Taoist still hopes that they can revive their masters in the future with their Taoist power. However, the Taoists in the mountains have always been handed down the secret instructions from their masters orally, so they chose to apprenticeship. Teaching and teaching are extremely strict and secretive. Some Taoist lineages even have ancestral precepts that must be passed down by a single lineage. The lead and mercury cauldron is burned and refined into priceless beads. As long as a golden elixir is cultivated, the layman can live longer by taking it, and the immortal master can live forever and stay in the world after taking it. So the pot of elixirs was indeed completed, and there were exactly 2 pills. Song Juchuan and Zhongshan were blessed with 1 pill. As for Qing Fengxian himself, he had already internalized the golden elixir, so there was no need for external objects to increase his Taoism. Wu Di seemed to see the old Taoist's embarrassment and Zhongshan's restraint, and smiled calmly. We live in poverty and are kind-hearted, so we Taoists call ourselves poor Taoists. The old Taoist stroked his beard and smiled. This is the truth. Zhongshan was eye-opening. It turns out that we Taoist priests also have a reason to be poor? Taoist Master Wu looked at the tall and thin Taoist boy and said with a smile, "In the world, money is in gold and silver, but in our generation there is Taoism and no Taoism, but it is in our hearts. It is not easy to enter the mountains, but it is even harder to cultivate Taoism. It is nothing to endure a little hardship, and heaven will give great responsibilities to these people. They will inevitably strain their muscles and bones, starve their body skin and deplete their body. This is the meaning of the question of cultivating the Tao. If you want to be free and happy as an immortal, you must first endure the hardships of the world. Since this little Taoist friend is already in the world, when you practice meditation and find the master, don't enter the treasure mountain only to come back empty-handed. Remember to have no distracting thoughts and be devoted to the Tao. Don't blame others or drag your body and mind into hesitation. Believe that opportunities are waiting for you." After all, Zhongshan was no more articulate or good at words than senior brother Song. He just bowed his head in a polite manner and sincerely thanked this strange Taoist priest for his words and teachings. Chen Pingan reached out and patted the young man's shoulder and said with a smile, "It's hard work cultivating Taoism, let's keep up the hard work." Qing Fengxian originally wanted to take Taoist Wu to his alchemy place to have a look, but the other party directly said, "You can't ask the importance of the tripod." When the old Taoist heard this, he choked for words. Is it indeed somewhat similar to the fisherman's respect that the young man in Confucian shirt said earlier? Qin Pingan said politely to the Master Jing visitor again, "Be pure and have few desires, have no competition with things, and have the spirit of a true person." Then he said goodbye and left. The smiling old patron didn't try to stay, but secretly made up his mind to go to that haunted house, to try his luck and see what the wormwood looked like. On the way, Qin Pingan happened to pass that group of people again. Taoist priest Wu Dis' square steps are no worse than those of the old temple master. After seeing the old Taoist with immortal spirit, the short man confirmed his identity and took out a secret letter written by the master. He bowed his head and handed it to him with both hands. "Hongtu came here to see Master Cheng." Qing Fengxian took the letter, opened it on the spot, read the content, and looked up at the young woman named Baoshu. The old Taoist nodded and said, "It is indeed a material that can be made. From now on she will stay in the temple to practice with Pindao. 3 to 5 years will be fine." People are in high spirits during happy events, and old Taoist priests are in a good mood. In fact, it is said to be a side branch of the Lu Guan sect. It is not wrong. It is similar to a countryman who said that his surname had an emperor hundreds of years ago. But secretly, he felt that the opportunity for this elixir to be created really lay in what Taoist Wu called a piece of mugwort. "When I was young and ignorant, I once uttered arrogant words. Anyone who is as idle as I am is a descendant of gods and refuses to become a god. Nowadays, I have achieved a small degree of success in cultivating Taoism, and there is hope for the elixir to be produced. Who is as crazy as a poor Taoist who has already succeeded in refining the elixir and refuses to accept the golden elixir?" Qing Fengxian asked his more thoughtful apprentice Song Juchuan to lead Gao Zhu and the others to stay in the temple. Back then, the old Taoist traveled from the Central Plains to Aquarius Island from north to south. During the journey, he stopped and chatted with the contemporary head of Yejiashan, and he got along quite well with him. In the history of Yejiashan, there was a founding master of Jindan sword immortal. However, after the sect was established, each generation was inferior to the next. The current leader, Yao Guozhen, was only a chi practitioner in the cave realm, not a sword cultivator. Now that he has finally found a good man and a beautiful jade, it is estimated that Yao Guozhen thinks that it is difficult to teach the Dharma, and is worried that it will delay the woman's future as a monk, so he thinks that he can use stones from other mountains to attack jade? Aha, Pindao also has this idea of adult beauty. Just think of it as forming a good relationship with Ye Jiaxin on the way to practice. In the future, when Song Juchuan and Zhong Shan leave the army, they will have a place to stay on their way out for training. In the capital city of Yuxuan Kingdom, there is a Taoist temple with a very small appearance but a unique cave. It was once named Alchemy Temple and was renamed Chongyang Temple. If the master of this year's contemplation and the contemporaries of the old days were both contemplating and practicing Taoism, how could they tell who was the master and who was the guest? Zhong Shan was walking with his master. He remembered something and plucked up the courage to whisper, "Master Jing, I know a friend. He was born in a poor family and was a foreigner. He fled to the capital and lived with his grandfather. He knew medicinal materials and could draw spring cows. 2. He knows some bricklaying work and he is very hard-working, so the disciple wants to discuss with the master, can he come to our Taoist temple to do odd jobs and become a permanent Taoist priest?" The old Taoist priest asked casually, "What's your friend's name?" Zhong Shan said, "Baiyun." The old Taoist thought for a while and came up with an idea, then said, "Zhong Shan, what do you think of the food in our Taoist temple?" Zhong Shan said honestly, "It's not bad. There really wasn't much oil and water, so I always had enough to eat." As for some of senior brother Song's private complaints, he did not tell his master, lest the more vindictive master would hold on to them. When the time comes, his master scolds his senior brother, and his senior brother turns around and hits him, and he will not be the only one who loses. The old Taoist stroked his beard and smiled and said, "As long as your friend named Baiyun comes to our place to do odd jobs for free, we will ensure that he has enough food for 3 meals a day. If he agrees, he will come here to help and work as a part-time worker first. Master, I will observe him for a few more days. If he is really honest, it will not be difficult for him to become a resident Taoist priest. But if he feels that he cannot make money and does not want us to Chongyang Temple, then forget it." Zhong Shan wrote it down silently with a happy face. It was probably because his Taoist temple was old and in need of repairs everywhere. The reason that senior brother Song came up with for him, the phrase, "I know how to do some bricklayer work," worked hard and convinced the master. Thousands of energy and phenomena circle around this place. Ancient immortals created this pavilion. There is a huge stone outside the pavilion, the top of which seems to have been cut into a platform with a sharp tool. Sitting on the stone platform was a burly middle-aged Taoist with a curly beard and skin glowing with the color of mutton fat jade. He seemed to be exhaling and exhaling. There were 2 lines of white smoke hanging from his nose, like a white snake hanging on the wall. There was water around him. It was foggy, and when the Taoist suddenly opened his eyes were gleaming with light, so terrifying. The burly Taoist priest spread out his palms, looked at the lines, discerned the mountains and looked at the 4 seas. Since he is a person who can see the mountains and rivers, the key is that he can also look at the chi at the same time. Numerology is in the dark, people and things are as new as before, and there are no doubts everywhere, everything is like the past. There is a pair of boys and girls sitting in the pavilion. Both of them are so beautiful that they forget the vulgarity. The handsome young man with a dragon beard and bangs, with a face like a crown of jade, sword-shaped eyebrows and starry eyes, with a long sword across his knees at this moment, can be included in the book and become a talented man or a young knight. There is a girl beside her who is charming and beautiful. Her appearance is so beautiful that people are at a loss for words. They were not surprised to see this scene. This master, whom they had just met for less than a year, once learned the nose-locking technique from an unknown stranger from ancient times. It's just that they have all kowtowed too much and learned skills from their masters, but they still don't know their master's name or sect. Is this a weird rule unique to the gods on the mountain? Moreover, the master only said that he was honoring the order of his sect and was going to Huzhou, northwest of Dali, to save a person who was born with immortal roots and bring him back to the mountains. He would definitely be able to bring glory to the sect one day. As a gift for accepting disciples, the Taoist priest once gave them a gift, 1 long sword and 1 short sword. He took off the long sword and gave it to the young disciples. It was about 3 feet 4 inches long. The sword bag is old, colorful and beautifully carved. However, the master did not reveal the name of the sword. He only said that it was a famous sword from ancient times. It was forged by a real person on land in a great mountain. He blew the hair on the edge and cut iron like mud. This sword can be bent and stretched, and only needs to be wrapped around the waist when not in use. It was once a sharp weapon used by Taoists for self-defense in the early days of mountain climbing. No matter how ignorant the young man is, he still knows that it is a treasure. Normally, he only needs to pull out the long sword 2 feet from the sword pouch, and he will feel the crystal light shining in his eyes. The middle-aged Taoist gifted the young apprentice a dagger, but he never mentioned its origin. He just told them to get close to the sword on weekdays and nourish the sword's energy with their own Tao and temperament. Naturally, the two of them couldn't understand the meaning of Tao Chi and Sword Chi, but they just figured out a reason. They thought it was the same as that person's theory of raising jade and jade raising people. They just got along day and night and played with each other from time to time. So every night when the girl goes to sleep, she will use the dagger as a pillow. After the Taoist priest opened his eyes and spread his hands, he glanced down and frowned slightly. However, he quickly regained his Taoist heart and closed his eyes again. The girl whispered, "Senior brother, Master only practices Qi day and night without taking a break. Master can live without grains and not eat whole grains. However, in this Taoist temple we have to climb over the wall to come in and out like thieves. Why on earth? Why don't you go directly to Huzhou to find someone?" The young man looked indifferent, shook his head and said, "How can I guess what Master is thinking? Both parties have been practicing martial arts and practicing Qi for less than a year, and they have reached a proficient level in light body kung fu. They can jump between the walls as fast as an ape, and move faster than a flying bird in the mountains and forests. It's just that they still haven't practiced swordsmanship, and their master never teaches them, so they have nothing to do. As for the 3 masters and disciples in the Taoist temple, it is really strange that they are still unaware of their existence." A woman in a green skirt appeared out of thin air and came slowly. She walked into the pavilion and said to Yen Yen with a smile, "You are the 2 disciples that senior brother Lu has just accepted. Which one is Fengqing and who is Jingding?" Ignoring their posture as if they were facing a formidable enemy, the woman introduced herself. "My surname is Xiao. In terms of seniority, I am your uncle. I won't mention my name for now. Our sect has very strict rules." They stood up and saluted Master Xiao, who jumped out of nowhere. "You and your ministers are all immortals and they should cherish and love themselves." The woman in green skirt stretched out her hand and pressed it twice, telling them not to be restrained, and said with a smile, "Practice well and you can expect a great path." While chatting with the 2 children, she said to the burly Taoist priest in her heart, "Brother Lu, why has it become so lively all of a sudden? 3 groups of guests came in one day?" The Taoist priest replied in a secret voice, "If there is no fate, we will never get together." The woman in green skirt said, "Gu Qin from Baidi City made Gu Lingyan and Imperial Master Huang Lai. How did they get together? I just got a spy report from the main hall." The foxy girl who pretended to be Gu Kan's personal maid turned out to be a female cultivator from the wilderness, whose name is Chunxiao. As for how she came to follow Gu Kan from the wilderness to the vast world, even the main church didn't know how she cultivated the path. She just couldn't find it out, and she said there was no need to check it again. "Senior brother Lu, do you think it's strange?" The burly Taoist priest said, "The really important news is not about Gu Kan and Chun Xiao, but about the Taoist priest Wu Di who just left here." The woman in the green skirt's eyes lit up. "Anything to say? How could he be more important than Gu Kan and Chun Xiao?" The Taoist priest revealed the secret with one word. This person's true identity is one of the talisman clones of Lord Qin of Luapa Mountain. The woman in green skirt asked, "Is he going to take revenge on the Ma family?" The burly Taoist priest said, "The revenge has been avenged. The previous vision in the sky is proof that Ma Kuxuan's body has died and his Taoism has disappeared." The woman in green skirt asked doubtfully, "How did you recognize it?" As for Ma Kuxuan's death, she was not too surprised. She just couldn't believe that Ma Kuxuan died like this. This news was really unbelievable. You must know that many people in the outside world are extremely optimistic that Ma Kuxuan will rise to the top within 100 years. It doesn't matter to her, why should she meddle in so many other things? The Taoist priest said, "Gu Kan left with his front foot, and Wu Di arrived with his back foot. Is it difficult to guess?" The woman in the green skirt had a strange look on her face and was a little worried. "I'm just going to tell you why the girl Gong Sun lost her aura out of thin air. Could it be because of him?" A certain landscape travel book that sold extremely well and was banned again has deceived many spectators. The case of Qin Ping, the master of Qin Ping, has been a ruthless master since he was young. The Taoist priest said, Do you still want to help such an abandoned disciple with a weak character return to the disciples? The woman in green skirt sighed quietly, unwilling to tangle with senior brother Lu on this topic. Although they are called brothers and sisters, they are from the same family but from different backgrounds. She remembered the business and asked in her heart, Uncle Cheng still can't wake up and remember his previous life? The main hall has asked about this, how should I reply? The middle-aged Taoist priest nodded and said, Uncle Cheng's cultivation was too smooth in his last life and his blessings were profound. In this life, it has become a burden and it is more difficult to gain enlightenment. If you return to the main hall, you don't have to expect that Uncle Cheng can return to the mountain for at least 200 years. She sighed and rubbed her eyebrows. In his last life, Uncle Cheng was already in the ascension realm at this age. I am now the immortal of the golden pill, so I am so complacent. An expert once made a very vivid metaphor. Uncle Cheng is a cornucopia of wealth and prosperity that comes to him without asking for luck. Yu Xian from Zhongtu, Wei Shi from Azu, He Xiaoyang from Aquarius, and Huang Ting from Tongya are all such people. She then became a little worried. Uncle Cheng's foundation will not be broken by that Gu Can, right? She didn't want to have any entanglement with Baidi City. In fact, it's not her, it's anyone else. The burly Taoist priest shook his head and said, no matter how talented Gu Can is, he still doesn't have this kind of vision. She asked, can't Gu Can see that? Where is that person? It's true that Uncle Cheng has self-proclaimed his Taoist title Hui Lu, which can easily make people suspicious. The Taoist priest thought for a while. Uncle Cheng is blessed with good fortune and strong Taoism. Even if he is confused, he can isolate the secrets of heaven on his own. Just like the protection of the martial arts master's fist, each has its own divine help. Master Qin has just entered the realm of Wangqi, so he should not recognize it. Out. She breathed a sigh of relief and said tentatively, that girl Bao Shu is so qualified, why don't you give it to your junior sister, senior brother? Bao Shu is the nickname of the woman from Huzhou, and her full name is Yuan Chaoxian. In the secret book of the main hall, it has an excellent rating. He is a talent that all three branches of the school want to compete for. Seeing that the senior brother was unwilling to talk to him at all, the woman in the green skirt continued to persuade him. You have accepted Fengqing and Jing Ding as your apprentices, so you should let the junior sister get some light. I have been busy in Luzhou, Beiju these years. There is hard work even without merit. It's time to recruit a good and promising apprentice. It is a gentleman's business to give credit to beauty. The burly Taoist priest said calmly, it's a pity that I am a swordsman and a Taoist. The woman in green skirt suddenly became speechless. He suggested, you can take advantage of Uncle Cheng to recover his past life memories and ask him to make Song Juchuan or Zhongshan your disciple. The woman in green skirt laughed angrily when she heard this and said, Senior brother Lu, when can our lineage accept male disciples? It turns out that her lineage has always adhered to the ancestral precepts and passed down the inheritance from female to male. Otherwise, she really wouldn't mind asking Cheng Fengxian for an apprentice. It should be noted that in ancient times, there was a deity in Zhongshan, and the Taoist name was Zhuyin. It was not under the jurisdiction of the Confucian temple. According to legend, the Taoist temple formed its own heaven and earth. This king saw it as day when he opened his eyes, and night when he closed his eyes. Later he was beheaded by his best friend, the sword immortal, and he prayed for his salvation and transformation, so that he could become a human body in the next life. At that time, the person who handed him the sword to help him escape was none other than Pei Min, one of Howren's 3 masters of swordsmanship. She suddenly asked, why did Uncle Cheng come to Aquarius continent to make elixirs? The Taoist priest seemed to say perfunctorily, there is God's will in the dark. There was a moment of silence. The woman in the green skirt was in a depressed mood. He is the only person I have misjudged. She was a little depressed. She originally thought highly of him, but she didn't expect that she underestimated him in the end. If you hadn't made a mistake back then and met him in Luzhou, Beiju, the world might not be the same as it is now. The Taoist priest smiled a little and said, besides, junior sister Xiao, your so-called high opinion doesn't seem to be much higher. He is just a warrior in the far-traveling realm? And he is sure that he can only have one in his life. 2 flying swords on the 1st and 15th day of the lunar month? The woman in the green skirt avoided the important and took the easy and said with a helpless expression, a martial artist from the 8th realm is just a Chinese cabbage? The Taoist priest asked, is there any other news from the main hall? The woman in the green skirt nodded and said, someone came back here from the colorful world. Someone once saw her sword shining like a rainbow, traveling across the sea. Looking at her direction, she was heading to Fuyao Island. Although he only said someone, the Taoist priest knew it well. The Taoist priest seemed to realize something and turned to look at her. She nodded. That Ningyao probably broke through again and again. Even though his Taoist heart was as firm as that of a burly Taoist priest, when he learned about this, he inevitably looked dazed for a moment and said softly, "Terrible." She nodded and said, "It's unreasonable to break through like this." She left the Great Wall of Sword Qi. In just a few years, nascent soul broke through to Yupu, killed ancient gods and immortals, and defeated Taoist ancestors in a battle of swordsmanship. The closed disciples had no power to fight back. They ascended, and now they are. She sighed heavily and said helplessly, "I really can't go on talking about it. I'm so irritating when I compare myself to others. It makes others feel discouraged." She then smiled and said, "I have become the best in the world. Even across the world I can still come and go when I want. It's really free." The burly Taoist priest suddenly stood up. As he stood up, he became taller and taller. He was actually a head taller than the man from the north of Aquarius continent. He said in a deep voice, "We are far away." The uninvited guest was still invisible. He just smiled and did not hide his sarcastic tone. Both seniors are at such a high level and have extraordinary status. Why do they like to talk about my family affairs so much? The woman in the green skirt followed senior brother Liu's gaze and looked somewhere. With ripples of ripples, the visitor finally appeared. The man wears a green shirt and carries a sword on his back. He has a slender figure and his white hair on the temples has turned green again, probably because he has reached the immortal realm. But he looked sluggish, probably because he had a hard time winning the fight with Ma Xuanhuan. She couldn't help but ask curiously, "When did Master Qin come here?" Qin Pingan smiled and asked, "I'm also curious, when did the two seniors come to Aquarius continent?" The woman in green skirt frowned and said nothing. "Are you here to raise an army to investigate? What is this person's true state at the moment?" The price for him and Lu Qin to temporarily borrow the realm was to fall from Yupu back to nascent soul. The Taoist priest explained her doubts with his heartfelt voice. Taoist Wu Di patted Zhongshan's shoulder before leaving the Taoist temple, and he noticed that Zhongshan's bones were unusual. It seemed unintentional, but it turned out to be intentional. As for when he sneaked into this place, yes, I don't know either. The woman in the green skirt became more and more confused. "You are an immortal and you don't even know?" In their profession they are either killing or being killed. They are most proficient in lurking and sneak attacks. How could Qin Pingan be aware of this place? The Taoist priest said, "It may be that your arrival has revealed the whereabouts." The woman in green skirt laughed angrily. The burly Taoist priest said, "My name is Lu Taoji and I am the leader of the Xishan Jianin lineage. Over at Tongyi's Hao, Mr. Qin has already met Qin Bai. She is the incoming leader of the Cherry Qingyi lineage. After she resigned, her position has been vacant for a long time. This Liangting person is Qin Bai's junior sister. Her name is Xiao Pu. There is no Taoist title in our sect. Even if we are not from the same lineage, we are mostly based on seniority." Xiao Pu's appearance is just that of a middle-aged man. His skin is slightly yellow, but he has an awe-inspiring and solemn demeanor. She wore a wooden hairpin on her head, wore a cotton coat and a pair of cloth shoes. She smiled and said, "If you imitate the flying Fook, you will be ashamed to be the swordsman." Qin Pingan was indifferent. Although the boys and girls in the pavilion could not hear the words of the three people, they were all very curious about the identity and origin of the swordsman in blue. Fengqing, a young man with his sword on his knees, looked on coldly at the uninvited guest. The girl stood still, but she couldn't take her eyes away, as if she had seen some exaggerated scene, with a look of wonder on her face. Xiao Pu said, "I was lucky enough to see the fighting style of Master Qin and the group of Beiyan cavalry and Jelu mountain assassins from a distance in Luzhou, Beiju." Qin Pingan said, "Not long ago the surrounding wild monks outside Toiwa mountain saw the fighting from a distance, and they probably felt the same way." Xiao Pu didn't seem to hear the strangeness in the young swordsman's words and continued, "Back then Master Chen's realm was not high, but his spiritual consciousness was extraordinary. At that time Qin Pingan was traveling with Sui Jingqing. On horseback he did feel a little strange. There was no clue, just an intuition of the crisis." Qin Pingan remained silent. It takes effort to speak. Lu Taoji seemed to feel that it was not appropriate for him to condescend to talk to Master Qin, so he fell down with a huge boulder because of the inappropriateness of etiquette. Both those who clean up wrongs and those who borrow swords are extremely mysterious. And compared to the latter, the Avenger is more cunning and unknown to the world. Just like the assassin praised in by Yes poem, he truly kills people in 10 steps and leaves no one behind. So much so that even Liang Shuang, the great heavenly master outside Longhu Mountain, and a great mountain monk like Lao Zhenren had to ask Zhao Tianlai to learn some inside information. For example, among the 3 lines of the Winning of Wrongs, they are the swordsman Xishan Jianin, the almost all-female assassins Cherry Qingyi, and the last group of generals who hold high positions in important temples in the 8 continents. This lineage has generally become the bowl saw man, is also known as the tinker. It is true to say that Yu Qing is not simple. Before this, Qin Pingan only knew the real surname of Ma Mansion's cook Lady Yu Qing. She was Gong's son. She was a former vindicator, but she was not from the Xishan Jianin lineage. Because of violating the rules, she was expelled, and lost her status as a wrongdoer. Only then did she have a contract with Ma Xuanhuan. She was tricked into working as a free coolie somewhere without wages, and was also imprisoned from time to time. Xiao Xing harassed him. It turns out that she is still Xiao Pu's disciple. Earlier, Qin Bai took the initiative to find Qin Pingan and opened the skylight to speak frankly. The Xishan Jianin lineage, whose identity and actions are extremely secretive, once wanted to put the general helm in Aquarius continent. Later, according to Cui Dongshan's additional statement, Lu Taozi's lineage of purifiers ostensibly had a dispute with the Dali punishment department that did not lead to any loss of life. Both sides hold their own opinions. The meaning of the Dali punishment department is very simple. It is up to the Dali dynasty to decide whether they should kill and when. In the final analysis, Lu Taozi and Cui Chan have different governance concepts. Qin Bai once took the initiative to invite Qin Pingan to be the chief guest minister of the Xishan Jianin lineage in Tonggishao, and was even willing to recommend Qin Pingan to become the supreme guest minister of the main hall of the wrongful persons together with his senior brother Lu Taozi. Qin Bai's so-called junior sister, Xiao Pu, was the one who cut off the head of the late emperor of the Yu dynasty of Tonggishao with her own hands. In fact, the most significant thing about Qin Bai at that time was her statement that, "There are also dead men in the rest of the world." This means that the Manhuang, Qingming and Wuxia worlds must all have secret chests belonging to the 3 veins of the wrongwashing people, but the lines are just different in length. But even so, Qin Pingan still pretended not to understand what Qin Bai said. Qin Bai was also an upright and cheerful person, so when he saw this scene he didn't say another word. Xiao Pu had nothing to say and Qin Pingan didn't want to talk. Lu Taozi has a special status and must carefully consider every word, and words should not be too casual. There was a moment of silence. It was Qin Pingan who was the first to break the silence. Ma Yueme of the Ma family. Among the female swordsmen she trained, there is one named Xuanhuan. Is she the one that Senior Xiao has chosen? Xiao Pu was full of energy and was worthy of being a young hidden official who was good at seeing subtle things. She nodded and said, "Mr. Chen's expectation is correct. She is indeed one of the candidates." Qin Pingan continued to ask, "Enshrined in Qing, she was once one of the cherry green clothes?" Xiao Pu said, "Her real name is Gongsun Lingling and I had high hopes for her. However, she was expelled from the Zhulan Hall because of a trial where she did not distinguish between public and private matters, vented her anger and killed indiscriminately, causing harm to others and violating the precepts." There are 3 lines of purifiers. In addition to the 3 hall leaders who perform their own duties, there are 2 leaders in the main hall, with no distinction in terms of status and authority. They are respectively the one who holds the situation and the one who holds the lantern. The Uncle Cheng mentioned by Lu Taozi and Xiao Pu is the latter. Before the rise of the Fire Dragon Master, he was the #1 fire master in the world. It turns out that their assassination methods are divided into day and night. One is to kill in public in broad daylight. Revenge for the weak, redress the injustice and see the light of day again. One is to sneak around at night and kill people quietly and covertly. Even if the night falls, the truth is still clear. Qin Pingan looked at Lu Taozi and said with a smile, "I don't seek fame or fortune. I wander around in the world of mortals, find people to save, help people in danger and rescue those in distress and do justice for heaven. It is indeed respectable." Lu Taozi said with a smile on his face, "There is a long way to go." Xiao Pu felt that there was something in Qin Pingan's words and it didn't sound like a good word. In this matter, the young hermit official has a good reputation. Qin Pingan asked, "It is said that Xishan Jianin's lineage was sent out of the country by my senior brother as a gift? To say something sarcastic? If I didn't really recognize what you were doing, why would I be willing to talk to you here so much?" Lu Taoji did not hide the matter and exposed his shortcomings. I had a discussion with Cui Chan about governing the country. Unfortunately, we were not in the same camp. In the end, Cui Chan thought that I was an old acquaintance with someone. That's why he didn't kill our Shishanjeni Nitong. Facts have proved that Xuanhuan is right. Qin Pingan hesitated for a moment, but still didn't say anything. There are not many people who can be regarded as friends by Senior Cui. Lu Taoji said, I once met a scholar named Cui in the Middle-earth Divine Continent. I don't know why he was sometimes sober and sometimes confused. However, our words were congenial and our personalities were compatible. We walked a journey together through mountains and rivers and traveled together for several times. It was a moonlit night and we drank a lot on the road. Neither of us asked about each other's identity, nor were we curious to explore. When we parted, we still only knew each other's last names. Speaking of this, Lu Taoji showed a little sadness. I was just wondering about something. As a scholar, Mr. Cui has great knowledge, but his boxing skills are even higher. I recall those days when the world was covered with snow, and I would travel alone with my sword. We would meet by chance and we would feel like old friends at first sight. We would go to a restaurant together if we wanted to ask what was on our mind. Chen Pingan corrected him. Senior Ciu's boxing skills are extremely high, but he has never surpassed his knowledge. Lu Taoji nodded. When I mentioned this matter to Mr. Chen, I had absolutely no intention of using emotion because I couldn't do it with reason. Chen Pingan smiled and said, Senior is worrying too much. Lu Taoji then continued, although junior sister Qin failed to persuade Mr. Chen, I still refuse to give up. To be honest, even if Mr. Chen doesn't come today, I will go to Luoluo Mountain very soon. Chen Pingan shook his head and said, Senior, with my good intentions, I am exempt from being an official. Lu Taoji hesitated to speak. Chen Pingan said, if it's just to bring up old things and chat about the past, I would like to personally invite Senior here to have a drink at Luoluo Shanshula. Lu Taoji shook his head instead, is there really no room for negotiation? Chen Pingan said, if anything we are already drunk by now. Bargaining with others is not my specialty. Xiao Pu stretched out a finger and raised his eyebrows. Chen Pingan turned his head and glanced at the girl. Jing Ding pretended to be calm and smiled shyly. Chen Pingan just smiled and didn't care about anything with her. Like Pei Qian, she seems to have the ability to see through other people's minds, or is it because of the magical power of her natal flying sword? If we say that the Taoist cultivators on the top of the mountain are all quietly fighting for the crossing, they are all carrying buckets to collect water, according to their own means. So now all the major sects in the world are robbing people, overtly or covertly. Fight for those who have become famous and are on the mountain to immediately strengthen the sect. Of course, we also fight for the embryos of monks who have not yet entered the mountain to deepen their foundation and strive to achieve success gradually over hundreds of years. For example, Qi Tingji's Dragon Elephant Sword sect is competing with the young hermit official for the group of sword immortals hiding in the wild world. Of course, this is a battle between gentlemen, and it is far from causing a red-faced incident. He also wants to fight with Fu Shi, the first disciple of Zheng Juzhong in Baidi City, to the sword immortal Su Jun, Su Xie from Liuxia continent, hoping that he can serve as the leader of the sect. Fu Jun also personally approached Wei Jin and invited him to join him, but was rejected by Wei Jin. However, Wu Shu, a martial artist at the end of Tongyi's Hao, had agreed to serve as the chief guest. What's more, Luopa Mountain also snatched an old deaf boy as the new general worshipper. Qingping Sword Sect also snatched 2 private swords from Jianqi Great Wall, Xing Yun and Lu Shui. To be honest, Shanzhu Qin and Luo Pashan are firmly on the Dao Yutai. If you have the ability, why don't you grab Xiaomo and Xiego from me? Moreover, Qin Pingan and Ning Ji, his newly acquired disciple, are the disciples who learn and master whatever the master knows and teaches. It's just that Qin Pingan never thought that robbing people would all be done to me. If I remember correctly, the last person to recruit me seemed to be Han Yushu, the immortal sect leader of Wanyao sect. If he hadn't become the Grand Master of Great Li, Lu Taoji and the others probably wouldn't have come to see him. Qin Pingan focused more on Ning Ji. As Qin Pingan guessed, Ning Ji, whose pseudonym is Bai Yun, will most likely be brought into this Taoist temple by his friend Zhong Shan, and then be qualified by the temple owner Qing Fengxian, who will spend all his money to teach Taoism. From then on, the young man will climb mountains and break through. He is extremely fast and can ride extremely fast, far ahead of his peers. Xiao Pu said with a smile, Master Qin Shan, since you are not just the chief guest of Shishan Jianin or Tao Tingyi Qingyi, Then I must explain to you clearly that the position of supreme guest of the main hall is not yours. The kind of false title on the mountain that I think has great authority. He is one of only 3 people in the sect who can know everyone's identity. Qin Pingan said. Oh. Xiao Pu was speechless for a moment. You've just become the Grand Master of Greatly, so you're so arrogant? Even if you refuse to appreciate it and don't even bother to say a few polite words? Qin Pingan said, I just refuse to serve as the newly established criminal officer of the Zhongtu Confucian Temple. Xiao Pu was stunned for a moment and she couldn't say another word. Lu Taoji said with a smile. Xiao Pu secretly stared at Mr. Chen for a while, hoping that Mr. Chen would not be angry because of it. Qin Pingan said, when a good person walks on the road he is just like protecting others. Why are others angry? Xiao Pu was obviously very surprised by this answer. Lu Taoji suddenly said a digression. I have a question, please ask fellow Taoist for help. Qin Pingan said slowly, any questions will be answered. What is practice? As if nothing happened. Upon hearing this answer, Lu Taozi's eyes lit up. Xiao Pu chewed these 4 simple words carefully and felt that the aftertaste was endless. Qin Pingan clasped his fists and said, just say goodbye. Lu Taoji returned the gift with his hand. Qin Pingan turned around and left, then suddenly turned around and said, Senior brother did not say that you can return to Aquarius continent. Lu Taoji was caught off guard by the Hui Ma shot, and for a moment he didn't know how to respond. Xiao Pu answered helpfully, but Cui Chan didn't say he couldn't return to Aquarius continent. Lu Taoji knew something was wrong. As expected. Senior brother Cui is no longer here. Qin Pingan stopped and turned around, paused for a moment and said with a smile, in Aquarius continent, regardless of north or south, I have the final say on many things. Sword of Coming Chapter 1224. Chapter 1224. A sword can defeat one person, a man of enlightenment and a swordsman. It seems that he can kill heaven and earth with just one word. Xiao Pu was silent and she was instantly sure that the previous desperate fight in Ma Mansion was definitely not Yu Pu versus Yu Pu, plus additional martial arts versus magical powers as they had estimated. It's immortal versus immortal. Regarding the cost of borrowing realms and Taoism from Master by Yu Jinglu, Xiao Pu and senior brother Lu had their own estimates. Even if Qin Pingan was a martial artist at the end of the realm, she still felt that he would definitely fall to the cave realm in one breath. Senior brother Lu said that Qin Pingan's martial arts physique was unusual. In Tongyi's Hao, he was the strongest and had reached the highest level of martial arts. He had a chance to help Qin Pingan stop his downward spiral. Stop when you reach the golden elixir. Lu Taoji had no choice but to help smooth things over, explaining, the vindicated people who were expelled by Cui Han were just our Xishan Jianin lineage and had nothing to do with Qin Bai and Xiao Pu's lineage. Their origins in Aquarius continent go, and you are not bound by the rules of the Great Li. If it were not for Xishan Jianin and Yingying Qingyi, who need to respect the orders of the main hall and have someone take turns to protect Master Qing, Lu would not have set foot on Aquarius continent again. Qin Pingan corrected with a smile, it's just a gift to leave the country, not to mention expulsion. Senior brother Cui is very polite to Xishan Jianyin's lineage. Xiao Pu had an upright character and couldn't bear to hear such yin and yang. She almost added fuel to the fire by saying, how can the Great Li dynasty, which only has half of the continent left, care about the affairs in the south? Lu Taoji first reminded Xiao Pu from his heart to keep his Taoist heart and not make mistakes. Then he continued to explain, Xiao Pu broke through Yuan Ying's seclusion back then. The process was extremely dangerous. Her inner demons manifested. She was a woman with a destiny from her previous life. A man surnamed Qin. Later, during an assassination, Xiao Pu was chopped into pieces by a certain swordsman. In the boundary of Nagku City, she still failed to escape from the swordsmanship and became a ghost. So today I met Qin Jianxian, she just lost her temper. The inner demon was a man named Qin, but the one who cut off his true form was the swordsman named Qin. Now he had to deal with a man named Qin again, which was really uncomfortable. When Lu Taoji mentioned the sad past, the woman in the green skirt snorted coldly. Old things are old things, but for Xiao Pu, who has a stubborn personality, one thing after another is just like the events before him. Xiao Pu immediately looked desolate and said cruel words in the market, always saying that if you don't take revenge you won't be a human being, but she is a ghost, but she still can't take revenge. It would not be wrong to say that we are not together. It is true that she is a ghost, and her enemy is still a living person and they have different paths. But now she is still walking in broad daylight, but he has long since disappeared elsewhere. Xiaopu crossed the line several times, using his merits with the main hall in exchange for 2 or 3 pieces of information, and always using his charisma in exchange for guidance. Unfortunately, he still struggled to find him. No, according to this statement, it is indeed death and death, in the literal sense. In front of Qin Pingan, he took a trip to Yuxuan Kingdom and had his revenge avenged. As for her, if a person compares with another person, it will irritate a person to death. If a ghost compares with a person, a ghost will irritate to death. Qin Pingan said, Qin Pingan, a Taoist cultivator and swordsman, can understand it, but junior brother Xuanhuan and the new national master of Dili do not accept it. He glanced at Xiaopu, who was from the cherry green lineage. Even the minister of criminal affairs of a country refused. You want me to be a county magistrate? If the invitation or persuasion fails, you will still feel that you are not knowledgeable and will not give you face. Who has the bigger face? A female ghost fairy, Xiaopu is also a top assassin from the cherry Tsingyi lineage. She should have a Taoist heart as strong as iron and be as immovable as a mountain, and not have a will as weak as a piece of paper, swaying in the wind. Xiaopu remained silent. Just because senior brother Lu reminded her from the bottom of his heart that if she continued to speak out loud, Lu Taoji would break the rules of the main hall. In fact, there were 2 reasons which Lu Taoji did not say. The young swordsman in front of him is so full of Tao Qi that he has almost reached the realm of heaven and earth. He is extremely mentally strong, so his yang qi is pure and scorching like fire. It follows the qi and its momentum is like running water moving up towards the eyes. But for the eyes. So to the ghost, even if the opponent stands still, it is equivalent to a sword question. He, Lu Taoji, was in the immortal realm and had worked hard to cultivate his Taoist qi so he could deal with it indifferently. Xiaopu was only in the Jade Pu realm, so he could easily be led by Qin Pingan's Taoist qi and state of mind. The situation at this time is quite mysterious. When Xiaopu sees Qin Pingan, the ghost can't help but hold a mirror to look at him. What's even more mysterious is that Qin Pingan is the man in the mirror, which seems to be able to affect Xiaopu's state of mind, making him unable to control himself. Like a puppet on strings. Furthermore, Xiaopu is the one who has the most entanglement with Qin Pingan among those who have cleared their wrongs. Whether Lu Taoji or Qin Bai, what they see in Qin Pingan's eyes is that he is a young hidden official and a disciple of Wenxing. So when we meet, we can discuss things in a relaxed manner. But this was not the case for Xiaopu. She had seen a lot of Qin Pingan's affairs when he was young, so it was the most difficult for her to be calm. Of course, Qin Pingan is still young now. However, Lu Taoji believed that Qin Pingan had already thought of these 2 reasons. It makes no difference whether you say it or not. Lu Taoji said, the position of the leader of Xiaopu's lineage has been vacant for a long time. Xiaopu has been busy for hundreds of years and traveled to 3 continents. Especially during the war, she took the initiative to go to Tongye continent. This is to accumulate external skills so as to fill the vacancy. After Qin Bai left office, there has never been a person in the Taoist Xinjiai lineage who has both moral character and high Taoist skills. About 100 years ago, the main hall established a new Taoist Xinjiai branch for Tao Tingyi. There is a rule that the person with the highest merit will be the leader, the person with the highest realm will be the leader, and the person with the most spiritual power will be the preacher, responsible for finding fairy seedling seeds. Qin Pingan nodded. If justice is in the heart of the people, one cannot ignore the credit he deserves. He glanced at Xiaopu again. Since this woman in green skirt is one of the 3 candidates to be the leader of cherry green E lineage, how high are the other 2 candidates? Xiaopu glanced at him. Have you seen through the trap that you carefully arranged to restrict the landscape and recognized your true appearance? How about imitating that certain young prodigy who has been coveting Gongsun Lingling for a long time, and prefers an older plump woman instead of a slender young woman? No wonder he looked down on the stunningly beautiful Sui Jingxing back then. Is the path number wrong? Qin Pingan was smiling. First, there was the excessive drinking and sex of the high toast, and then there was the wrong way of the woman in the green skirt. Your eyes are all on your buttocks. Perhaps he felt that the atmosphere was too solemn and there was no need to make the relationship so tense. Lu Taoji smiled and said, since we have not negotiated a deal with Qin Guosher, the immortal of the Yuan dynasty in Huzhou has also come to Chongyang Temple. After that, the affairs of the master's sect will be all over. It was left to Xiaopu to deal with, and the main hall couldn't find any fault. I was happy and free, relieved my burden, and went to other continents to try my luck. To be honest, Qin Guosher and the Dali Song family helped Luo Luoshan select fairy seedlings for ground materials and practice martial arts. Geniuses may not be better than us. After all, the Great Li Court can only look for good talents in Jade in Aquarius continent and Tongye continent, but we can work quietly for 20 years for a chief minister in the 8 continents of Hauran. By then, Luolu Mountain is closed and reopened, and the number of cultivators in the upper sect is probably only a lot more than that of the lower sect. Qin Pingan waved his hand and said with a smile, "There are benefits to being busy and there is leisure to be lazy. There is no need to persuade Senior Lu." He stretched out his hand without hitting the smiling person, and was not surprised by the politeness of many people. Qin Pingan thought for a moment and said, "With the Shishan Genin lineage from now on, whether it is here to secretly protect the way for the elders of the master, or to go somewhere outside the Great Lihuzu, there will be no problem if the Daidu people return to the mountain and the lintel of the gate is illuminated. However, there are scandals ahead and I will report this matter to the Dali Imperial Court. Lu Taoji, Xiao Pu and Jun Qing are all high-ranking scholars. I regard you as gentlemen of Mingyu Qingfeng. You must not treat me in the Dali court as fools." Lu Taoji heard that Xian understood the elegant meaning and immediately nodded and said, "If we have a conflict with Nian Ganlang of the Dali Xingbu because of a certain monastic genius, members of the Shishan Jianin lineage will take the initiative to give in and choose other disciples. Perhaps this is the reciprocity of courtesy and reciprocation." Sensing Qin Pingan's gaze lingering on him again, Xiao Pu could only follow up, "I haven't become the chief helmsman of Cherry Tsingyi yet, so I don't dare to say anything for sure, but I will send a few words of advice to the main hall. When I met the Minister of Justice and Yan Ganlang who were out of Dali, I just had to give in. But whether this matter will succeed or not will still need to be discussed and decided by the main hall. I don't have the say." Qin Pingan nodded and said with a smile, "The starting point of a business is not money but integrity." It's just that Xiao Pu couldn't help but feel worried. More than once or twice, this person didn't look at her face but wanted to look at her figure. When a man looks at a woman, he doesn't look at the face but the breasts, and he doesn't pay attention to the eyebrows and waist buttocks. Is he really just like that thief? What Qin Pingan is really interested in is certainly not what Xiao Pu misunderstood. But the robe of the woman in green skirt, which has multiple magic restrictions, seems to be a mountain treasure that starts as a semi-immortal soldier and may even reach the rank of an immortal soldier. And the more Qin Pingan looked at it, the more familiar he looked. It turned out that in the Xuanhuan mountain area, the real person Qing Qian who looked like a child had a robe on his body and he looked magnificent. It was the treasure of the Jingke sect that had been passed down from generation to generation. A certain abandoned disciple of Tianjun Chao Rong is himself a wordless Taoist book. It can help Qing Qian get through the Yuming Pass. To a certain extent, he can ignore the restriction between yin and yang. After passing through the gate of hell, he can walk on the road to the underworld as a living person in the underworld. However, how far he can go in the underworld probably depends on the monk's merit and merit. The power of Taoism is strong or weak. However, the one worn by the woman in green skirt is somewhat different from the Taoist robe worn by Qing Qian. It is not just because of its higher rank, but also because of the 7-dimensional celestial phenomenon of the sun, moon and the 5 stars of gold, wood, water, fire and earth. There is a left-hand and right-hand difference. The Taoist robe worn by Qing Qian is left-handed, and the robe worn by the woman in the green skirt is right-handed. This is correct. The real Qing Qian is a living person but Xiao Pu is a ghost. They need exactly the opposite to reverse the yin and yang, and finally reach the same destination through different paths, and each can walk on the road to the underworld. Lu Taoji laughed from the bottom of his heart and said, "Xiao Pu, the voices of you and me can be heard by Master Qin for example now. As for whether the thoughts outside the heart can be seen through by Master Qin, I don't know. I'm not sure." Xiao Pudeo was shocked and his face turned ugly. She was more horrified than surprised. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "The realm is low. It's just that we are not far from each other. The moon is near the water and the tower is first so I can barely hear the vague voice. As for the thoughts, they are so hidden that they cannot be seen through. We can only rely on guessing, which may not be accurate." Lu Taoji smiled and said, "Master Qin really treats people with sincerity." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "I guess this sentence is not an irony?" Xiao Pu sighed quietly, not talking about others, just saying that in her life, it seemed that anyone named Qin was not easy to mess with. "I owe you the last name Qin in my previous life, right?" Qin Pingan cupped his hands and clasped his fists. "See you later, let's drink next time." Lu Taoji clasped his fists and said, "The next time we meet again we will probably meet again on another continent in a foreign land. Then Lu will have a drink and see if the Qingshan drink from the second shopkeeper is real." Qin Pingan laughed it off, turned and left. The last time we discussed matters at the Confucian Temple, Mrs. Xianxia from Zhuhai Cave Sky didn't say anything. You outsiders didn't count the truth or lies. Lu Taoji will return to Shirtai, finish his homework, and then leave Chongyang Temple and Aquarius Continent. When she turned around and took the first step, dressed in a green shirt and long gown, in an instant, the woman in the green skirt, who was originally resentful of herself, seemed to have been taken over by a dove. The robe, in an instant, turned into a piece of cleaning clothes in the hands of a woman who was pounding the clothes by the water, wrung out the stream water, and twisted them into a length like a long rope, shaped like a short spear and a long blue sword. A straight line hit the back of the young swordsman Qingguisher. The vision was overwhelming, too fast and silent. Lu Taoji just tiptoed and floated into the sky of the boulder. Just relying on his assassin's instinct, he felt something was wrong. Lu Taoji suddenly turned around and looked. The ghost fairy was stunned on the spot. Even though Dao's heart was as tough as his, he was still destined to be unable to stop him, but Lu Taoji didn't just sit there. As the situation got worse, he wanted to drag Xiaopu's soul back and keep it where it was. Even if this move would tear her soul and robe apart and damage her foundation, it would be better than Xiaopu taking action again, losing his mind and going crazy, and having a life-threatening battle with Chen Jianxian. In a daze, Lu Taoji felt that the heavens and the earth were rotating together, and the scene in his eyes changed again and again, as if someone was holding his head and staring at the dozen or so picture scrolls and albums on the table. Finally, Lu Taoji was in the vast and endless void, with a colorful Milky Way, dazzling stars, and a long golden bridge spanning the realm of Taishu. The assassination of Xiaopu's soul together with the green skirt was unstoppable. Lu Taoji repeatedly made seals and assisted with swordsmanship, but found that he could not stop Xiaopu's soul at all. All he could do was watch helplessly as the Cyan force burst open all the fantasy worlds as thin as paper, making a series of tiny tearing sounds. Then he broke through the dense sword array, talisman array, and thunder array that the opponent had temporarily set up. Like the powerful fists protected by the gods, several robes, it was unclear whether they were spear points or sword points, were pressed against Qin Pinggan's back vest. Passed through. That Xiaopu still couldn't understand his hatred, and he obviously wanted to take advantage of it, completely smash the body of this young swordsman, and then crush his soul so that he would not only fall into trouble but must die. Perhaps it was the tenacity of Qin Pinggan's body and soul, as well as the existence of the caged bird and Jing Zhongyue. The combination of the three was beyond the assassin's expectation. In the realm of boundless Taishu, the assassin sighed and failed. Just killing an immortal is so ridiculous. If Qin Pinggan is injured but not killed, no matter how serious his injury is, it will still be meaningless even if he falls into an ordinary state. I knew that this person was not very old but was not easy to kill, but I didn't expect it to be so difficult to kill. What a providence. Is there really no shortcut on the road to the 14th realm of Hadao? Since the attack failed, he had no choice but to retreat. Lu Taoji seemed to be in some kind of drowning situation again, and his breathing was stagnant. The picture scroll scene is like the tide receding. At the same time, deep in Xiaopu's soul, the guest, who was a mustard seed, suddenly shattered into pieces, scattered into a wisp of blue smoke, and was taken away. The long and slender river of time that he created earlier was the path of this person's magic. Indeed, there is no better means in the world than this to eliminate Dao marks and destroy evidence. That existence made a sound in his heart, which was very surprising. It turned out that the young Xuanhuan actually stood there, motionless. Instead of practicing a section of time water and a section of Huangquan road at the same time, he chose to be injured rather than be trapped by the long river of time. He followed the flow of water and reversed it, returning to him and Xiaopu. Lu Taoji was in the same situ, a moment ago. Qin Pinggan spoke hoarsely and said distantly, "Wait." Everything returned to normal. Outside the Chongyang pavilion, Xiaopu's face was pale and colorless, as if he was a mess from another life. Lu Taoji's heart was extremely heavy. If Qin Pinggan had previously launched an army to investigate, he could have eased it a bit. Now that something like this has happened, how can he settle the score? At the most minor level, it was the Yinyin Qingyi lineage and the Xishan Jianin lineage who had a grudge in their hearts and assassinated the greatly imperial master. At the most serious level, was it the three lines of the One-Washers colluding with Barbarian? Instead, Qin Pinggan, who was assassinated, turned around with a calm expression. I thought I would be hit by Wuzhou Yijian from Qingming Tianxia inexplicably. I never thought that a ghost would be the first to take action. He just wanted to kill people. What was the other party planning? In the past, on top of the city, when Qin Pingan first took up the post of hidden official, there was a local swordsman from the Great Sword Qi Great Wall who also went on a murderous rampage without any warning. Having suffered a loss once, Qin Pingan would not make a second mistake, so he came prepared for his second visit to Chongyang Temple, wearing a few more robes and military armor. 1,000 days to guard against thieves, practice makes perfect. Even the female crown of the 14th realm, the sword passed by my continent across the world, Qin Pingan is ready to take the next sword. This time is not the 14th realm. If he can't catch it, it is better to hide in the Luoluo mountain, or I might as well move to the Gongda forest in the Confucian temple to read. Therefore Lu Taoji and Xiao Pu found this startless sneak attack thrilling, but Qin Pingan, who was assassinated, was okay. Why did Qin Pingan look at Xiao Pu's robe many times? Again, Qin Pingan is very disciplined and would not stare at a woman again and again. Generally speaking, if a new member of the 14th realm in the wild world wants to escape with Qin Pingan from the Haoran world, he must first pass the Lixing and Confucian temple levels. It is not impossible, but it's not big. Because the Lixing is outside the sky, staring at the green road. Therefore, after Qin Pingan thought about it, what he was most worried about was a sneaky detour, such as a great monk passing through a certain underworld road to assassinate himself. That's why Qin Pingan was so concerned about the robe worn by the woman in green skirt, and was careful. Xiao Pu was naturally unable to argue. Several times he tried to speak, but she swallowed it back. Lu Taoji was also helpless. How should he explain this to Qin Pingan and how to explain it to the Chinese Confucian temple? No matter how the assassin possessed Xiao Pu, his level was so high and his methods were so secretive that it was unbelievable. A top-notch magic technique from a monk at the peak of the Ascension realm? No, we have reached the state of perfection only half a step away? Was it a 14th realm candidate who deliberately targeted Qin Pingan in a deliberate and sneaky attack? Qin Pingan was indeed seriously injured in the battle with Ma Xuanhuan. After such a beating, the injury was even worse. Qin Pingan coughed a few times, put his fist to his mouth, rested for a moment, retracted his hands and sleeves and said with a smile, "It's okay." He added another sentence to lighten the atmosphere, "Senior Lu, you don't need to think too much." Lu Taoji smiled bitterly. Could this be considered okay? Even Xiao Pu wanted to give this person a thumbs up when he heard this. A man is so open-minded, and Yin Guan is indeed a hero. Qin Pingan thought for a while and explained, "Lu Taoji, Xiao Pu, you really don't have to feel guilty. I have to thank Xiao Pu for protecting a certain friend from disaster. Otherwise it will be replaced by Shu Jianhu Zhengyi, the female ghost Shui Rui in the capital?" Qin Pingan had roughly figured out the situation, looked at the woman in the green skirt and said with a smile, "But Xiao Pu really has to thank me once, and he was able to avoid a disaster with weapons, and there are no hidden dangers in his defective Taoist heart. It just so happens that he has to thank me once. Offset, we don't have to express our gratitude. Those who practice Taoism must rely on external objects, act according to their will, take risks and cross the boundary between yin and yang, and go to the underworld to look for clues about their enemies. They must not do it again and again. How can you always walk by the river without getting your shoes wet? It's not good to walk too much at night. Revenge is necessary, but it doesn't mean giving away a head to the enemy for free. If I guess correctly, the enemy surnamed Qin that you are looking for has either attached himself to this ghost in the underworld or was eaten up by it. Maybe every ghost in the world is a mountain and river ferry for them to fly across. The name, Qin Pingan, is like the green curtain wine flag of a restaurant in Xinjia Ferry? Xiao Pu patiently listened to the teachings of a young man without getting bored. In the past, she had never been so modest with her most respected senior sister, Qin Bai. On the premise that she knew that senior brother Lu was here to protect the Taoist priests, she only said that she came to Beipingzu from Luzhou and Beiju and came to the capital of Yuxuan Kingdom to watch Qin Pingan take revenge on the Ma family on Wuxia Street. Are these thoughts really my own? What a strange mistake. At this moment, Xiao Pu felt as if a big stone had fallen to the ground in his heart, and his Taoist heart became a little clearer. Seeing that she didn't move, Qin Pingan could only remind her, "Xiao Pu, to be cautious, it is safe to deliver the robe you are wearing to the main hall for refining." Xiao Pu realized later. She quickly reached out to grab the robe, pulled it off, not daring to keep it in her hand, and handed it to Lu Taoji, who quickly put it into his sleeve. Lu Taoji did not dare to take it lightly, using several methods of overpowering. She was still dressed like a woman in a green skirt, perhaps because of the coexistence of the blindfold and the robe, so her face and figure had changed at this moment, and she was as beautiful as the plump character. The sight of the young girl and the young girl in the pavilion, so close to each other, has long been covered with white fog, making it difficult to see clearly. Qin Pingan understood clearly. Such a hot potato, Lu Taoji accepted it immediately. The key is that the swordsman never changed his mind at all. It can be seen from this that the 3 lines of purging the wrong people are indeed intimate and act bravely and aboveboard. Qin Pingan's grudge disappeared. I said politely before that I don't care, but now I really don't care about you anymore. This is called treating others with sincerity and being consistent in words and deeds. Lu Taoji seemed to be aware of Qin Pingan's temptation, and smiled bitterly in his heart. On top of the Chongyang wall, stood a young woman with her hair in a round bun. It was Pei Qian who came here from the Qinghuang temple in the capital. Qin Pingan heard the content of Pei Qian's secret message, smiled and nodded. It's a coincidence and a coincidence. It turns out that Zhou Fangyu, the highest-ranking city god in the city god's temple in Haoran, happened to be taking General Fan on a private visit to Aquarius continent incognito. As a result, a ghost from the underworld committed a murderous act, and it was right under his nose. This forced Zhou Qinghuang to immediately return to the temple of the city god in the divine continent of Middle-earth to sacrifice something that was forged by the ceremonial saint and canonized by the most holy master. It's such a sacred thing that I have to go to Fengdu myself. Before Zhou Qinghuang left, he asked Pei Qian to send a message to help apologize to her master, and then made an exception to reveal a secret. According to Zhou Fangyu's derivation, this ghost that has been blocked outside the threshold of the 14th realm for many years is trying to kill Qin Pingan, the last hidden official of the Great Sword Qi Wall from the side of heaven, which is neither good nor evil and impartial. Taking the place of all the souls of the demons who died on the Sword Qi Great Wall in the wild world, it is like helping them redress their grievances, and earn a large amount of Inda, which can be used as the basis for one's own 14th realm of Hadao. With this cost, on the ghost path, it is possible to help him take one more step. As for the identity of the ghost, it is not suitable to be revealed for the time being. But regarding this matter, Fengdu in the underworld and the Qinghuang temple in the human world promised to give an explanation. Previously, there was indeed a majestic voice as loud as thunder, in the Huawei land that was not under the jurisdiction of Fengdu, resounding throughout the vast territory of the small half-underworld. I want to eradicate a demon for the world and kill Qin Pingan, a living person in the world. Before the endless trillions of ghosts in the underworld came to their senses, the sound gradually faded away. Afterwards, countless walking ghosts who were originally from the wild monster clan raised their heads and looked around, noisy and excited, waiting for good news. The wait has been fruitless, and I don't know if Qin Pingan has been killed or not. Under the scolding and whipping of the ghosts from the underworld on the road, they had no choice but to continue moving forward. The candidate ghost of the 14th realm used several life-saving means that greatly damaged his Taoist practice. He abandoned the Taoist temple and fled again and again, and has disappeared since then. Zhou Fangyu showed his majestic appearance, raising one arm high, holding a divine object, like holding a blazing sun in his hand, clearing the way, melting endless darkness with infinite light, and carrying 4 gods including Gan, Lu, Fan and Xia the general, together with several kings from a certain palace in Fengdu, rushed to the dojo where the ghosts had abandoned themselves. Pei Qian asked worriedly, "Master, are you okay?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "This is a small injury. Even if it's drizzling, Master won't be rolling around in pain and losing his master's demeanor." Pei Qian grinned. Qin Pingan and Lu Taoji said goodbye, shrunk to the top of the wall, then jumped off the wall with Pei Qian and walked towards the small house. Lu Taoji, who looked like a burly Taoist priest, returned to the stone platform. Xiao Pu did not want the 2 nephews to see his true appearance, so he used his blinding method again and sat on the edge of the stone platform. Lu Taoji smiled and said, "Why don't you say a few words from your heart, but you have to point the needle at the wheat on?" On his side, every word he says is not pleasing to the ears. Xiao Pu's temperament can be known just by looking at her, Pima Zong Zhuquan and Azuxia Songhua, who have been close friends for many years. "I am thin-skinned and cannot imitate Zhu Quan and Xia Songhua's dirty talk," Xiao Pu said angrily. "Besides, there are differences between men and women. If senior brother Lu expresses his admiration for the young hidden official, it is a sign of sympathy between men. I am a woman, so I can avoid being misunderstood by him and wondering whether I am interested in him." Lu Taoji asked a good question. "Interesting?" Xiao Pu didn't seem to answer the question and smiled sweetly. "It's meaningless." Lu Taoji laughed loudly. On the other side of the pavilion, the two children were very surprised. It was a ghost when their master showed such true feelings. Xiaopu asked, "He obviously agrees with our purpose of doing things. Being a noble guest of the main hall is a pie in the sky. Why did he refuse?" The knowledge of meritorious service passed down by Xiaohu. He is the only one who has truly learned the essence and can be called the heir to the mantle. It is normal for a closed disciple of the Wenxing lineage not to want to join us. Now that he has become the Grand Master of Great Li, why are he still unwilling? Lu Taoji said, "Mr. Qin has already given the answer." Xiaopu raised his eyebrows. "What's the explanation?" Lu Taoji smiled and said, "How does he evaluate Cui Qing?" Xiaopu suddenly realized. "I see. Boxing skills do not exceed the rules, and knowledge is not as great as it is great. When it comes to Qin Pinggan's identity, is he no bigger than a pure sword cultivator?" Lu Taoji said, "Besides, Qin Jianxian is in a special situation now. Sword training is his top priority and he cannot relax for a moment. Otherwise, he would not even refuse the invitation from the Confucian temple. We outsiders think that he is in his early 40s. He has become an immortal and his speed is fast enough. But he may not think so. Maybe he is still too slow? Some old grievances. The outside world is just looking at the flowers in the fog and we don't know the truth. Practice boxing to risk one's life. Another village will be bright with dark flowers, one will continue the Chongqing Bridge, and finally become a swordsman on the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Now that he is alive and returning to the vastness, there is hope for climbing to the top and seeing the road. It is really not suitable to be distracted. You need to be focused on nothing else. Go. I have gone through all the hard work to get to the top. All I want is to defeat Chao Ci with boxing and defeat another person with swordsmanship. The former does not matter whether I can succeed or not, but the latter must be achieved." Hearing this, Xiaopu gently touched Qingxuan and murmured, "No matter how talented and smart he is, how can he win against that person?" Lu Taoji said with a smile, "You can't rely on too many external things and you don't have to think too much about other people's affairs." Xiaopu remained silent and rolled his eyes charmingly. Qin Pinggan was walking on the street with Pei Qian. After walking a few steps, he suddenly figured out something. The mugwort hanging at the door of the house was given to the female ghost Shui Rui by Lu Qin. He could also go around it. Give it to Qing Fengxian, who was supposed to be the preacher of Bai Yun? Can it even be used to block the cross-border sneak attack by that Ascension Realm ghost? Lu Qin made a seemingly indifferent move. As long as Qin Pinggan understood the connection, wouldn't he have to accept 3 favors from him at the same time? It seems that I really have to learn the calculation of inner rejection in the past. When Qin Pinggan recovered a hidden sword talisman left in Chongyang Temple, this talisman was called Ripple, so if there was any slight disturbance, it could be recorded one by the talisman. It was one of the many talismans that Qin Pinggan drew casually when he had nothing to do when he and Lu Qin were temporarily borrowing realms. This talisman is not small, and the threshold for its use is very high. It takes an immortal to sacrifice it, post it somewhere and wait for it to happen. Qin Pinggan shot himself in the foot before. He drew a box of talismans and hid them secretly. Because he returned the 14th level of Taoism, he fell to nascent soul, and as a result, none of them could be used. Now that my realm is high and I have enough confidence, it's up to me whether I use it myself, sell it to make money or give it as a gift from the mountain. And inside that box, there was a pile of large talismans that could only be used by Ascension Realm monks. Pei Qian said, "They are back." Qin Pinggan smiled and said, "You don't need to follow. Just sacrifice the 3 mountain talisman and go back to Tongyi's Hao Dadu to do business. There is no need to worry about master." Pei Qian remained silent. Qin Pinggan thought about it and could only come up with a lame reason and said casually, "As long as the ultimate level is not reached, it will not be of much help to the master. So when I arrived at Tongyi's Hao, I practiced boxing while busy with the general affairs. You can't slack off in anything, and you can't be arrogant and complacent because you think it's not difficult to return to the true state. You are now at the highest level of energy, the master has returned to the true state, and Chao Ci is even more amazing." Pei Qian hummed, "Don't worry master, I will work hard." Qin Pinggan immediately regretted it and felt very distressed, so he immediately changed his words and said, "There's no need to try too hard." Pei Qian didn't say anything, he just pursed his lips and slightly wrinkled his 2 slender eyebrows. Qin Pinggan bent his fingers, gently smashed a chestnut on Pei Qian's head and said softly, "You want to get out of a world that belongs to Pei Qian. From now on, when you speak and do things, you don't have to think about whether the master will feel what he heard or saw. It's wrong. Before the master came back he was doing very well. There is no reason why the master has come back, but he has become helpless. It seems that Pei Qian is deliberately hiding from that Jing Qian, and Jing Qian is hiding from her master. This is not good. Pei Qian was still depressed and silent. Chen Pingan put his hands in his sleeves and almost wanted to reach out and slap himself. He shouldn't mention Chao Ci or anything amazing. No, this debt must be settled on Chao Ci's head, no, on his face. Pei Qian took out a 3-mountain talisman from his sleeve, suddenly walked a few steps faster, walked in front of his master, then turned around and walked backwards, grinning and saying, "Master, let's go, see you later." Chen Pingan nodded, with gentle eyes, and made a talisman to forehead gesture. Pei Qian Nanyan offered the 3 mountains talisman and imagined 2 continents and 3 mountains in his mind: Zitong Mountain in the south of Aquarius Continent, Qingjing Mountain in the north of Tongye Continent, and a mountain near Yunyan Kingdom in the middle of Dadu. Her figure disappeared in a flash. After several flutters, he soon appeared on a mountaintop across the continent. Qin Pingan walked towards the house. It is indeed as Lu Taoji said. On the road to martial arts, wanting to stand shoulder to shoulder with Chao Ci and then catch up to him is of course one of Qin Ping's 2 biggest aspirations in learning boxing in his life, but the final result is far less important than the process. One day in the future, if Wen Quan can really beat Chao Ci, that would be an unexpected surprise. It seems, there is no shame in losing. Anyway, Chao Ci can win my punch, which doesn't prevent me from punching Chao Ci in the face. As for practicing swordsmanship, the process is important, but the results are even more important. A sword that can defeat one person is enough. For example, this person is Yu Do. Sword of Coming Chapter 1225. Chapter 1225, Killing and Ascension. Back at the house, before Qin Pingan entered the door, he heard Lu Xianying's loud voice, talking about how he was in swordsmanship on Jianghu Mountain and what a hero he was. Guken didn't bother to expose Lu Xianying's braggadocio and not write a draft. This guy went to the Jianghu Mountain Patriarch Hall to block the door, but there was no conflict. The 2 male and female patriarchs of Jianghu Mountain who rushed to the door were very respectful to the master of the Longquan sword sect, and even led him. Lu Xianying visited several forbidden halls that were usually not open to the public. When Guken arrived there, Lu Jianxian was drinking tea leisurely. I just don't deny that Lu Xianying is quite human-like when he is serious. He can be said to be a swordsman or a swordsman, and the sect leader is full of style. When going to Jianghu Mountain, Lu Xianying directly wielded his sword to the ancestral hall. When leaving, he took Guken and walked down the mountain together. Facing an old master of Jianghu Mountain who personally sent them to the mountain gate, Lu Xianying smiled and asked if he wanted to make up for the etiquette himself. The implication is that he can first pass through the mountain gate, then walk through the Shinto and finally walk down the mountain again. The old master who was responsible for adding lamp oil to the ancestral hall year after year smiled and said Lu Jianxian didn't need to be so polite. Before Ma Xuanhuan came down from the mountain, he had already separated from the genealogy and left behind a number of extremely rare and valuable treasures. It was considered that he and Jianghu Mountain had taken the initiative to repay the debt of preaching to Jianghu Mountain without any debt to each other. Not only that, even the name and Taoist title of Yu Shiwu were cancelled by Ma Xuanhuan on the closely guarded golden and jade genealogy of the ancestral master hall in Jianghu Mountain. Guken saw Qin Pingan slowly walking into the hospital. Why did he seem to be even more depressed? He asked in his heart, "What's going on?" Qin Pingan said, "It's nothing. It can't be explained clearly in a few sentences. I don't have the energy to speak for the time being. I will review it with you when I have the opportunity." Lu Xianying didn't know whether he was generous or didn't see anything, so he waved to Qin Pingan and said, "Come in and drink." Qin Pingan said, "If you can't drink, I'll take my share. If you want to drink more, you can do it for me." Lu Xianying laughed and said, "Whether the hometown wine is beautiful or not depends on whether it is close to the people in the hometown. I almost forgot, this is not a small town." When Qin Pingan sat down on the bench, Guken looked outside the house and asked for no reason, "Can you understand it this way? Rain is actually raining money." Lu Xianying said carelessly, "Spring rain is as valuable as oil and long drought brings rain. As the old saying goes, it's not about spending money." Guken was non-committal. Gu Lingyan was more curious about the young Yingwen's answer. "I never thought that." Qin Pingan would just echo, "That's understandable." Guken glanced at Lu Xianying. What was wrong? Lu Xianying was so angry. "You two are half-hearted scholars who have never attended a serious school for a day, so you don't take seriously a serious scholar like me?" Sensing Qin Pingan's eyes, Lu Xianying understood and shook his head. In any case, Lu Xianying had no great benefit from the beginning to the end of this disunion of the founder of the three religions. Gukin said without hesitation, "Lu, when are you going to have the wedding banquet? To be precise, can you serve the banquet earlier or later?" Lu Xianying sprayed a sip of wine at Gukin waved his sleeves to scatter the hidden weapons. Lu Xianying cursed angrily, "Little slug, if you don't want to be the best man, just say so. Do you think I'm a stranger to you?" Gukin said angrily, "I don't care about being the best man, I just want to listen to Changzhen." Lu Xianying was immediately defeated and said angrily, "This kind of vulgar custom should be avoided if possible." Qin Pingan was a little strange and asked in his heart, "Yushuan Kingdom is not close to Jianghu Mountain. How do you get there and back? Did you use the Three Mountains talisman?" Lu Xianying sneered and said, "In his free time, Lu Jianxian created his own sword light escape, which is enough to open up the world, and his speed is not inferior to that of the Ascension Realm monks." Gukin said, "There is a secret escape method in Baidi City, but it is expensive to use and has a fly in the ointment. Generally, genealogy monks and sects seek Taoism and Dharma, but in Baidi City, Gukin chose Taoism and Dharma to learn based on his mood and experience." Pu Lu and others, although they had already made guesses in their minds, when Gukin actually said the three words Baidi City, they still pretended not to hear this and pretended not to know who the young man in scholar's shirt was drinking at the same table. Qin Pingan asked in his heart, "Is there something urgent?" Gukin said, "Lu Yuzhou has just promised me to serve as the deputy sect leader. Due to emotions and reasons, I want to go to the capital city of Yunyan State in Tonggishao to meet this future right-hand man." After saying goodbye to Man Huang, Gukin asked Yu Xuanfu to help deliver a few words and a gift to Lu Yuzhou. It is hoped that Lu Yuzhou can serve as the deputy sect leader of the new sect. In the future, everything in the sect, inside and outside from people to things, except for the sect leader Gukin, will be personally assigned and arranged by Lu Yuzhou. Gukin also gave Lu Yuzhou a small wooden box inlaid with hundreds of treasures. It was empty. However, if the ban is successfully lifted, you can talk to Gukan. Even if both parties are in the same continent, there are limits on the number of words and the time limit, and is directly linked to the level of both parties. Gukin has always had a temperament that dares to think and act. Since everyone is competing for talents, he will grab one of the richest Qigong practitioners in the future. The one he fell in love with was Lu Yuzhou, the future head of the Lu family in Aizhou. On the other hand, the Shujin Lake Oriole Island Zhongsu and others are actually dispensable. Lu Xianying rubbed his chin. "It's really not a trivial matter, little slug, I forgive you. If you have to hurry up and try not to miss being the best man to drink the wedding wine. It's up to Qin Pingan to persuade the wine, and it's up to you to stop the wine. As long as you are here, I am not afraid of being drunk anymore. It's a night of flowers and candles in the wedding room, so we can't sleep soundly until dawn." Qin Pingan hesitated for a moment and then said cautiously, "Lu Xianying, can you and Xianhuan have a wedding banquet with wine in this year's Mid-Autumn Festival?" I turned over the almanac and asked the ceremonial saint. "It is indeed a good day to get married." "Of course. If the date has already been decided, just pretend I didn't say anything." Gukin curled his lips. If Master Huan had already made arrangements and Qin Pingan came to do this, he would probably not even think about being Lu Xianying's best man, or even thinking about having a wedding banquet. Lu Xianying's eyes lit up, he rubbed his hands and laughed. "It's so embarrassing to ask the ceremonial saint about this kind of thing. If possible, I just say, what if, Qin Pingan, you have a lot of face now, why not just do it? The ceremonial saint invites you to come over for the wedding banquet. It would be better if you can sit at the main table and say a few words to prove the marriage." Qin Pingan had a headache when he heard it, and he stretched out his hand to rub the center of his brow. But he was thinking about this matter seriously. If he had previously agreed to Li Sheng to become an official in the Confucian Temple, would it be feasible? However, Gukin began to pour cold water on the hot-headed sect master Lu, and sneered, "What, do you want Qin Pingan to drag the Li Sheng to listen to Changzhen again?" Lu Xianying quickly turned around and said a few childlike words. Lu Xianying drank a bowl of wine, wiped his lips and said with a smile, "The specific date for serving the wine has not been decided yet. Will it be August 15th this year? I will go to your sister-in-law to make the calculation first, and then discuss it with blacksmith Huan. Anyway, you two just wait for me to notify you of the date. Little slug, you just need to go to Tonggishao first. It's best to meet Lu Yuzhou and then establish the sect like a fool. By then, the three of us will all be together. Is he the sect master? Would be nice to spread the word. By the way, Qin Pingan, inviting the ceremonial saint to drink wedding wine is a joke. Don't take it seriously. But there is something you must do for me, that is, Ningya must give it to your sister-in-law. Be a bridesmaid. I am not discussing this matter with you, I am giving you orders and you must follow them. Do you hear me? Qin Pingan smiled and nodded. It was rare that Guken did not create trouble. He nodded and promised, then I will establish the sect as soon as possible. Not counting guest ministers and some unnamed worshippers whose identities were concealed, the hundreds of monks with genealogies displayed on the bright side of Baidi City were divided into two by Zheng Juzhong and given to two direct disciples. This meant that the two sects founded by Fu Su and Gu Ken were about to equally share Zheng Juzhong's strong family fortune that had been accumulated for 3,000 years. It also means that Gu Ken, who has already become more mature, will suddenly become a prominent figure with the most say in Hauran continent. Lu Xianying asked from the bottom of his heart, the separation of Baidi City at this juncture, does this mean that you are regarded as Mr. Zheng's close disciple by default? Gu Ken shook his head and said with great certainty, I am definitely not Master's disciple. Lu Xianying asked curiously, does City Lord Bai favor you more, or does he favor his disciple Fu Qi more? Qin Pingan rolled his eyes. Lu Xianying said angrily, what are you doing? Is it wrong for a big brother to care about his little brother? Qin Pingan raised his chin and said, keep going. Gu Ken took a sip of wine and said slowly, it's not about favoring anyone. Fu Xi and I each have our own advantages and disadvantages in dividing the family property this time. Monk, from the quantity to the realm, the master has already calculated it very accurately. Except for Han Xiao, if Sei joins my sect, the entire Jinsui city will also be merged into my sect, two immortals. Lu Qiqing and Liuli Gu follow Fu Qi, and there is an unidentified Ascension Realm monk who hides his head and tail by the chief worshipper of the imperial city. This person will protect the sect leader Fu Qi. The owner of that golden green city in the wild world is the female fairy Qingjia named Xuanhu. She owns a lot of high-quality robes including water refining and banana leaf. And Jingqiqing itself is a money tree that can make money roll in. Zhu Lian kidnapped a fox country from the Su family in Qingfeng City. Zheng Juzhong moved the entire Jinsui city in the barbaric world. This is called peering. There is nothing to say about the rest of the Jade Pure Realm and Earth Immortal monks. Master believes that their achievements are limited. The only thing I feel regretful about is that I couldn't get an unknown female cultivator from Master from the 2 times I opened my mouth. Her realm is average. On the surface she's just a stagnant person. She is in the Jade Pure Realm, but she has a special status. With her or without her, the difference between a sect is quite big. Lu Xianying clicked his tongue and was filled with envy. He picked up the wine bowl and said, this family's inheritance is unprecedented. My mouth is watering after hearing this. I must drink to calm down my shock. Qin Pingan asked with a smile, does she have some kind of innate power? Gu Ken nodded and said, similar to the maid named Ji Qin who followed Du Shanin. Qin Pingan understood instantly and expressed regret for Gu Ken. This must be a pity. Lu Xianying clicked his tongue and said, my eyes are open when I see money, but I want change my nature. The 2 ancestral coins of xianxia are naturally treasured by the Lu family of Aiaijo. After all, the Lu family's ancestors relied on this mine to make their fortune. As for whether the great Tao has manifested into a human body, there have never been any rumors. So what is it? What appearance and posture it takes to appear in this world is a mystery. According to the inside story that the white-haired boy leaked to Qin Pingan, the ancestral money in the world is always in pairs, which means that there are existences like Changxing and Jiqing in the world. Lu Xianying asked, you really don't want to drink? Qin Pingan shook his head and said, 1 or 2 pots of fairy brew, a little bit of spiritual energy, and drizzle cannot quench the thirst of the human body and the world. Lu Xianying frowned and said, is it so exaggerated? Qin Pingan said, it's okay. Just go back to the mountain and practice slowly. You can make up for it later. Qin Pingan was a bit overwhelmed by the killer spell that struck him with all his strength from a demon that had reached the Ascension Realm. Even though he was prepared for it, Qin Pingan was still a little overwhelmed. Not only the pain of the skin and body, but also the chaos of the heaven and earth brought about by the agitation of the soul. Qin Pingan needs to carefully reconcile it, which consumes countless thoughts. What is really troublesome is this sinister sap, which makes Qin Pingan almost deflated, like a bird in a cage, just like a hole in the Yellow River cave sky was poked by Yes sword. This left Qin Pingan with lingering fears. The key to such an unforeseen disaster was that he didn't even know his enemy's name, Taoist name, or master's biography. Chen Pinggan was so angry that he wanted to pretend to be heroic and drink a few bowls of wine on the table to make Lu Xianyang and Gukan slightly. "Don't worry, I'm afraid of vomiting blood while drinking." If his merits weren't enough to support him from traveling to the underworld in Fengdu, would Qin Pinggan really want to take Xiaomo and Xie go to the underworld together, digging 3 feet into the ground to dig out that ghost, a candidate for the 14th realm? "I walk up to you and let you kill me." However, Qin Pinggan knew very well that since this ghost dared to act like this, it would not only be difficult to kill, but also even harder to find. Not wanting to talk about these troublesome things, Qin Pinggan changed the subject, looked at Gu Kan and said with a smile, "Where's Brother Longbow?" Gu Kan said, "I don't know where to find it. Chai Bofu is not on the list. I don't know where it was thrown by the master. He is also a wonderful person. When he went to practice in Baidi City, Chai Bofu fell into a state of being as good as eating home-cooked food." No wonder Qin Pinggan would ask about this person, half a fellow? Qin Pinggan asked, "I heard that you accepted a student?" Gukan felt a little embarrassed for the first time. There is a Jade Pu realm wild cultivator in Fuyao Island. His name is xuanhuan. Because of a trivial matter, Gukan has been pestering him for more than 2 years. He couldn't beat Gukan, who had many different skills, and Gukan at that time couldn't kill him either. Gukan was very patient and always followed her, specializing in making the other person sick, making them like a pair of crazy men and women entangled in love and hate. In the end, the yellow flower god was so sad and angry, "But you let me have a stable meal and a clean ship?" In the end, there was really no other way out, so Huang Huashan had no choice but to admit defeat and admit his mistake with Gukan. Gukan said that he was not sincere enough and refused to count, so we continued to reason. Huang Huashan almost collapsed on the spot. Later, Huang Huashan followed Gu Kan and performed the disciple ceremony. He changed his body, changed his previous temperament, and became very dignified in his behavior and speech. There's also an interesting anecdote on the mountain. For people who like wine, wine is a thing that can relieve thousands of worries. Wine is a prajna soup that can make people have wild dreams and become a Buddha. Lu Xianyang rarely talked about his time as a student at Xuanhuan, and talked about his former classmates. "I remember that on the day before a spring outing in Xianxia one year, there were 2 poor men in the same dormitory. They were not bad in origin, well-educated and well-educated. They thought that learning was hard work and did not want to give them more money. They wanted to ask for extra money from the family. Can only buy books. So much so that the 2 wealthy disciples often joked to themselves that they had never worn silk clothes before they were 16 years old. They planned to boil a few eggs for food that day and boiled water. Since they didn't know how long it would take to cook, they used chopsticks to poke one of the eggs. If it wasn't cooked yet, they waited again. Lu Xianyang, who returned to the school at that time, was very happy to see him. One person said that he was useless as a scholar, and another person said that he was nothing more than that. Later, one of these 2 people wrote books and became a master of the School of Historical Geography, and the other became a famous Jiran family in South Pajuo. Unlike Qin Pinggan, who gets more and more bored as he drinks, Lu Xianyang can't control his mouth as long as he drinks freely. 2 ounces of wine can produce the same voice and vigor as 2 pounds of wine. Qin Pinggan suddenly stood up and said, "I'm going to meet a friend outside the door. You continue to drink yours." When I opened the door, the sky was blazing with clouds, and the sunset reflected a young woman in a plain horse-faced skirt. I don't know if it's because of the slight application of powder and dark eyebrows, or because the clouds linger on my face and don't want to leave. It turned out that the female ghost Shui Rui had the courage to come to this alley and pretended to be passing by. It didn't seem to matter whether she saw the Taoist priest Wu Di or not. When the door creaked open and she suddenly saw a strange man in a green shirt, she felt a little flustered. But when she looked again, she blinked her long autumn eyes, recognized the man's identity, and said with a blessing, "I've seen Qin Chen, Mountain Lord." Qin Pinggan smiled and said, "Miss Shui doesn't need to see anyone outside, just call me Taoist Master Wu." Shui Rui didn't know how to answer. Just now she caught a glimpse of the bustle in the main hall. So many guests? Yes, it is him after all. As long as he does not close the door to thank guests and does not close the mountain to practice Taoism, no matter where he settles down, there will naturally be no idlers coming and going, and everyone will be in high spirits. Besides her secluded haunted house, the loneliness made her often sit on the swing, waiting for the sound of cars rumbling outside the wall in the dusk. Qin Pinggan smiled and said, "I won't stay here for long. I will go home soon. I welcome Miss Shui to visit Luolu Mountain when she is free." Shui Rui nodded and smiled, hiding his hands behind his back and intertwining his fingers, trying to make himself less nervous and not make the two of them look so unfamiliar. Chen Pingan hesitated for a moment and asked, Miss Shui, I would like to ask, when things happen in the capital, the boy next door will also have an official career. After that, does Miss Shui want to establish a sect somewhere in Yuxuan Kingdom, or cooperate with the imperial court? Discuss, should we enshrine a landscape deity and enjoy incense sacrifices? Or should we travel first to relax and then find a place where we can practice pure practice? Shui Rui shook her head and murmured softly, I didn't expect it to be this far. Chen Pingan thought for a moment and said with a smile, for the first two options there is a person in the house who is a friend I just met. He happens to be able to help and can talk to the court of Yuxuan Kingdom. As for the third option, it's not difficult, I also have friends taking care of the Five Island sect in Shujian Lake there. Although Huang Lai had just resigned as imperial advisor, it was still easy to think of helping Shui Rui deliver a message to His Majesty the Emperor. Lu Xianying would not miss this kind of excitement. He rushed over and leaned against the door, watching with a smile. Guken was afraid that the ivory would not come out of his dog's mouth, so he had no choice but to follow him. As expected, a dog can't change its habit of eating shit. Lu Xianying really didn't give Guken any chance to be surprised. He quickly joked in his heart, Chen Pingan, you are now promising. I dare not take you to Luolu Mountain, so I have to leave it outside. Where is the beautiful girl in the golden house? He received an elbow from Guken, and Lu Xianying immediately grinned. Chen Pingan continued, if you feel that Shujian Lake is too close, you can go to Qinghu Palace in Tonggishao or Taiping Mountain. They are both good places with good reputations. Guken smiled and said, if Miss Shui is willing, you can take a few more steps to Fuyao Island in the southwest and treat it as a sightseeing tour. There is a sect with a strange name over there called Back Mountain, which is very easy to find. You can find out who you are looking for by just asking. I am still the worshipper of the Back Mountain, so I can write a letter to help introduce you. Shui Rui smiled and said, Mr. Qin, are you trying to drive me away? Qin Pingan laughed dumbly. For a while I didn't know how to explain the reason. If he hadn't seen the woman in green skirt in Chongyang, but had replaced him with Shui Rui in front of him, even with Lu Chen's mugwort guarding the door, the consequences would still be unpredictable. Xiaopus' realm is high enough, and a trip of time if the long river flows back, her body can bear the sequelae, and she may even have the opportunity to be a blessing in disguise and turn it into a great income. Shui Rui may not be able to accept this kind of surprise. In many things, Qin Pingan doesn't think that being bitten by a snake once and being afraid of the rope for 10 years is a derogatory term. Shui Rui looked at the two people at the door and asked, but sect leader Lu and Master Gu Xian? As a result, both of them were unhappy. Because Shui Rui happened to say the opposite. Probably she felt that the leader Lu of the Longquan sword sect should be a gentle and elegant swordsman. Gu Qian, the madman from Baidi City, is a playful and cynical character. Qin Pingan smiled from ear to ear. Okay, Miss Shui said this so well that they both felt like two basins were on their heads at the same time. As soon as he opened his mouth, he couldn't help but cough a few times. Qin Pingan quickly put his fist to his mouth and stopped laughing. His face and eyes were still full of smiles. Guken was okay and just smiled. Lu Xianying said aggrievedly, Miss Shui, we are familiar with each other, but I must say that once you said it, what look in your eyes, no wonder you would lure the wolf into the house and let Qin Pingan stay in your house. Guken said something fair. Who is familiar with you? Miss Shui is. Before Guken could finish speaking, Qin Pingan kicked him back. There was a shoe print on the gown and Guken shook the gown with a smile. Shui Rui turned sideways, folded her clothes and saluted and said with a smile, Mr. Qin, I am here today just to say thank you. Don't say anything about kindness, especially not to outsiders. Don't forget when you've received a favor and it's best to tell others about it. Qin Pingan smiled and nodded. Shui Rui thought about it seriously and said, as for whether to stay or go, we will discuss it later. If I have an idea one day, I will definitely not be polite to Mr. Chen and send a letter to Luopa Mountain immediately. The person who felt the most regretful was actually not Qin Pingan, but Huang Lai, who was listening to the conversation with his ears pricked up in the room. I wish I could run out the door and beg her for something. If Shui Rui is really willing to stay in Yuxuan Kingdom, whether she is to start a sect or find a landscape Empress Dang Dang to build a temple and ancestral temple, Huang Lai really just wants to have a word or two with Emperor Shui Pang. Does the female ghost Shui Rui owe a favor to former Imperial Master Huang Lai? Definitely not, but Mr. Qin, the matchmaking middleman, owed a certain favor to Huang Chongfeng. Does Qin Pingan need to return the favor? Of course there is no need for it, and even if Qin Pingan gives it, Huang Lai will never accept it. As long as he doesn't accept it, he will have an extra iron coupon for the alchemy book given by the sect master, which is equivalent to an extra gold medal for immunity from death. Huang Lai was wondering whether she should say hello to Emperor Shui Pang and the imperial court secretly help her. Gu Kan, who had his back to the hall, said from his heart, Huang Zongfeng, I advise you not to add any unnecessary extravagance. Huang Lai was horrified when his thoughts were read, and he accused him repeatedly. Shui Rui came out of the alley, picked up her skirt and a pair of embroidered shoes and chose a dry place on the street to settle down. Of course she sincerely thanked and respected Mr. Chen. But for some reason she still felt that the Taoist priest Wu Di, who was generous, was more interesting and approachable. There is no wine table in life, but the cup should always be filled with wine. Qin Pingan packed some soft parcels and packed them into something within easy reach. Of course, he did not forget the fortune-telling stall that could be disassembled and reassembled. If you have many skills, you will not be overwhelmed. In the future, when you go out, in addition to working as a baggage owner, you can also go back to your old business and set up a stall to make money. Qin Pingan asked, What do you say? Should we go directly to Tonggishao? Or go to Nujiadu and wait for a cross-continental ferry? Gukan said, Go to Nujiao ferry. Lu Xianying asked lazily, How do we go back? The 3-mountain talisman is too precious and we can't use it more. We have to save some money. If it were just the 3 of them, it would be okay even if they didn't use the 3-mountain talisman or the sword or the wind. Gukan said, I have a Liuxia boat which is not slow. After leaving the capital we can take the boat back to Nujiadu. Lu Xianying clicked his tongue in surprise. This is a good thing. Have you ever heard of it? How did you get it? Gukan said, There are several secret warehouses in Baidi City that are unattended. I often go there to wander around and relax. One of the secret warehouses used to store treasures is this Liuxia boat. It is idle anyway. Then he refined it and brought it out again. Lu Xianying was shocked and said, Then you are a domestic thief and City Lord Jing doesn't care? Gukan said, Since you don't care, you just don't care. Does Fuqi dare? He didn't dare. Lu Xianying asked, A lot of treasures on the Liuxia boat? Gukan nodded and said, All of them belong to me. Huang Lai's eyelids trembled as the two sides did not use their true feelings in the conversation. As expected from Baidi City, the road is really wild. After that, they hid their bodies together, hid their whereabouts, and quietly left the capital of Yuxuan Kingdom in the wind, arriving at a secluded mountain on the border of Zhiyao Mountain. Grandmaster Shin is currently in the Golden Body realm and cannot travel far across the earth, so he is the only one who can be carried on someone's shoulders and travel far away. Gukan took out a palm-sized pocket fairy from his sleeve. He first used secret techniques to unlock the restrictions, and then threw it into the air. Suddenly it was as big as a normal ghost ship, hanging in the air. Lu Xianying boarded the Liuxia boat, which was famous all over the world, and asked tentatively, Sect Master Gu, please ask Mr. Zheng, does he still accept anonymous disciples? Gukan sneered and said, Do you think I should be my godson? Lu Xianying reached out and grabbed Gukan's arm. Besides City Lord Zheng, are there any other ways? Gukan raised his arms and said, Crawl away. Lu Xianying said with a playful smile, Qin Pingan is injured. You feel sorry for me? How can I be a hero if you take it out on me? Qin Pingan asked doubtfully, Can you refine a huge thing like Liuxia Zhou? Gukan hummed and said, There is a long-lost ancient secret technique in Baidi City, which specializes in refining objects and transforming them into emptiness. However, the threshold for practicing is not low. As far as I know, only Han Xiaosa is proficient in this technique. In order to after learning this Taoist technique, she scrapped a lot of artifacts on the mountain, including more than 30 magic weapons. I am more interested in this, but I still only learned a little bit, and it can't be considered as an intrusion. If you want to, I will make a copy for you later. Qin Pingan waved his hand. Since it is one of the 12 great arts she vowed to learn, once you learn it, don't tell anyone about it. Gukan said, Don't you and her have a business deal? It's not like exchanging money for Taoism is non-negotiable. Qin Pingan glared and said, We are all people who want to be the leader of the sect, but they still can't understand the other mountain rules of the sect? Do you understand the difference between closeness and distance? Do you really think Han Xiaosa won't be sad? After giving a lesson, Qin Pingan went to choose a room to sleep in, and asked Lu Xianying to leave the boundary of Huashan before waking him up. Lu Xianying uttered an ouch and said, "You have good intentions and are scolded for nothing. Someone is feeling miserable." Gu Kan, who was clearly being treated as a fool for his good intentions, snorted, but his mood improved. Gu Kan asked Gu Lingyan to control the floating cloud boat. As for Huang Lai and Shen Ku, they could just choose a room to rest. Lu Xianying followed Gu Kan all the time, which made Gu Kan, who had his own plans, angrily said, "Why don't you just lift a toilet behind my butt?" Lu Xianying put his arms around Gu Kan's neck and said with a smile, "Let's say a few words of respect to each other." Gu Kan came to a room with many restrictions, opened the door and stood outside. "Pick a few things for yourself and then get out. I only have one request, you are not allowed to use the xianxia in your sleeves." Lu Xianying complained, "Why did I get such a tacky brother like you? Wahaha, I got rich." The house was filled with precious light, so dazzling that it almost blinded Uncle Lu. Gu Kan is about to close the door. Lu Xianying quickly stretched out his hand to hold the door of the house and said solemnly, "You are vulgar and I am aloof? No way." Gu Kan sat on the threshold and didn't bother to care about what Lu Xianying picked. He just took a few items and let him go. A bamboo basket with fish, a muntjac leg, a basket of eggs, half a drawer of steamed buns. When Lu Xianying gave these things to the slugs in Mud Bottle Lane, he didn't even blink. Entering the house was like entering a treasure mountain. Lu Xianying touched this item and rubbed his face against that item and was dazzled. Gu Kan didn't push him and just sat there patiently. Lu Xianying turned around and shouted, "Sect Master Gu, can you lend me a few things that are close to you?" If he didn't mention this kind of request, he wouldn't be Lu Xianying. Gu Kan turned a deaf ear. "It's bad for me. I can't watch it anymore. I really can't watch it anymore. If I watch it again, I will really have the intention of killing people and stealing goods." Lu Xianying covered his eyes with one hand and came to sit next to Gu Kan as if he was smearing. The two doorkeepers. Gu Kan said, "Would you like to take it? Be careful not to wait until I say something." Lu Xianying smiled and said, "Forgot? I am different from you and Qin Pingan. When have I ever worried about my livelihood? When have I taken advantage of you too?" Gu Kan nodded. Thinking back to those days, Qin Pingan's biggest dream was to do business with Lu Xianying and make money together when he grew up. He started doing things and let Lu Xianying make the decision. As for Gu Kan, it's even simpler. If he eats and drinks with him, he will definitely not be hungry, so he can just lie down and enjoy the happiness. Who made him the youngest? Lu Xianying carefully took out a jade plaque from his sleeve and handed it to Gu Kan. "Be careful not to break it. This is an old item." Gu Kan took over and asked doubtfully, "Give me a gift in advance for founding the sect?" Lu Xianying laughed angrily and said, "What the are you thinking? Am showing off my wealth to you and I can't get back my place?" Gu Kan asked, "Is it an ancient cave that is not recorded in the records, or is it a broken blessed land?" Lu Xianying smiled and said, "It doesn't matter whether it is a cave or a blessed land. Do you have it?" Qin Pingan has the lotus root blessed land and I also have a small cave, but Sect Master Gu, you are a bit shabby. Gu Kan suddenly raised his hand high, pretending to throw the jade token. Lu Xianying immediately apologized and said, No, brother Gu, I will kneel down for you." Gu Kan casually threw the jade token back to Lu Xianying. Things that have never been seen in the world are rare. Lu Xianying caught the jade plaque with both hands, breathed a sigh of relief, and wiped it carefully with his sleeve. It was called Shuetian Dong Tian in ancient times. The territory is not big, but the mystery is not small. If it were not compared with Baidi City, the Longquan Sword sect, now headed by Lu Xianying, was actually not poor and had a strong family background. Moreover, it was famous in Aquarius continent for having small expenses and large accounts. As the last saint in charge of Liju Cave Heaven, Ruan Qiong made a deal with Old Man Yang and secretly bought a cave heaven and a blessed land from the other party. But regarding this matter, only 2 people in the entire Longquan Sword sect know about it now. Apart from Ruan Blacksmith, who went to concentrate on forging iron swords, there is only Lu Xianying who succeeded the sect leader. Shuetian Cave, also known as Qingyang Cave, is not among the 10 major caves and the 36 small caves. The Misty Blessed Land is a middle-grade blessed land. There are no people inside, only mountain spirits, water monsters and charming plants and flowers. It really feels like a paradise. A jade plaque and a piece of text inscribed, "It is not the blue dragon that serves as the water supervisor, the land becomes the ravine and the water becomes the field." On one side of the seal on the side is engraved with, "As time goes by in the world, there are many hazes here. The blessed land is in the earth, in the people, in the heaven and earth, in the materials and treasures, in the cave and in the heaven, in the Tao, in the latent souls cultivating immortals. According to Ruan Xiong's plan, the Shuetian cave was handed over to Lu Xianying and opened as a private dojo. It was regarded as a benefit that belonged exclusively to the sect master. It could be passed down from generation to generation in the hands of the sect master in the future. As for the caves obtained by each new sect master, were they acquired by the predecessor? Whether the sect master ruined it or enriched it, it all depends on their own fate. Ruan Xiong doesn't care about this. Children and grandchildren in the market have their own blessings, let alone practicing Taoism in the mountains and becoming gods. The Xianxia blessed land was given to Donggu, who was the first disciple, but in this case, it became a headache to know what to give to Zuhaifeng Su Xiaoqiao and Hengshanfeng Xialing, who were both direct descendants. Especially when Su Xiaoqiao accepted a direct disciple, Li Xuanhuan, Ruan Xiong became even more worried. A sect that can possess both heaven and earth is a beautiful thing that everyone dreams of. Before the two juniors on the mountain, the Longquan Sword sect and the Luapa mountain, only Xingao sect had accomplished this feat in Aquarius continent. Tianjun Qijun also controlled the Qingtan blessed land and an unknown island that was not listed in the official list, named Dongtian. The beauty of the cave lies in some kind of unexpected joy that can be encountered but not sought. For example, some Tao auras that come from nowhere and are completely traceless. Another example is that the fragments of a golden body that have been washed away and precipitated by the long river of time may even emerge from an ancient treasure that has been tempered by time and become natural and flawless. Therefore, as long as a monk owns a cave, it is equivalent to having an extra to reward rice. Eat the golden rice bowl. Lu Xianying said, "There is a magical function in this paddy field cave. It is a doorway that I discovered by myself not long ago. Sitting on the edge of the field, looking at the reflection in the water and then visualizing myself, it is very suitable for practicing swordsmanship in a dream, and you will get twice the result with half the effort." Taijiang Ruan guessed that Old Man Yang had a better treasure that could match my ancestral sword scripture, but Old Man Yang was reluctant to take it out. If I had known earlier that I would become the second master of Longquan Sword sect, the backyard of Yang's pharmacy is my second home. Gu Kanpai smiled and said, "What are you regretting? You just need to go and establish a good relationship with Li Huai. Maybe you will get unexpected gains." Lu Xianying rubbed his chin. "I'm not familiar with him." Gu Kan said, "Qin Pingan is very familiar with him." Lu Xianying laughed loudly. "You are so jealous it makes no sense." Gu Kan asked, "Have you ever heard of the illusion of Ren Jiabao mirror?" Lu Xianying nodded and said, "When I was studying in the Chuanru Qin family I glanced at a certain Jiguai Zongzhao, but I didn't pay much attention to it. It seemed to be called Flying Spirit, which was regarded as ancient by knowledgeable people. Something forged by a certain Dayua Taoist? Why do you ask this?" Gu Kan gave a thumbs up and pointed to the room. "It's just inside." Lu Xianying rubbed his hands and said, "Brother Gu is kind." Gu Kan said, "Master said that the credit month has a good origin, and she has the best chance of becoming the predecessor of the bright moon." Lu Xianying immediately reprimanded, "Insolent! There are no rules. You can call my sister-in-law's name casually?" Gu Kan remained silent. Lu Xianying was silent for a moment and said calmly, "She is who she is and she doesn't need to be anything else. If she wants to, I will help her. If she doesn't want to, no one can force her to do anything, and no one can talk to me about benevolence, justice and morality. The importance of interests and so on. Jing Juzhong is no exception." Gu Kan smiled and said, "It can be seen that Master is just kindly giving you a warning to prepare for a rainy day, so that you don't want to be kept in the dark when things happen." Lu Xianying immediately clasped his fists and said loudly, "Mr. Zheng is so righteous, I have so much respect for you." Gu Kan rubbed his eyebrows. Lu Xianying shuddered and looked strange. What strange is that from beginning to end, I never called Zheng Juzhong by his first name. Gu Kan smiled and said, "Why, Master chatted with you?" Lu Xianying said seriously, "Mr. Zheng praised me for being young and promising, responsible and ambitious." Gu Kan smiled and said, "As long as you are happy." He stood up. Just didn't close the door. Lu Xianying stood up and asked strangely, "With the door open like this, are you really not afraid of attracting thieves? It is difficult to guard against domestic thieves." "I, Lu Xianying, have a limited Taoist mind and I can't control myself anytime. Don't blame me for not keeping a close eye on you. You'll learn from Qin Pingan's way of letting go when things go well for you." Gukin left straight away and said with a smile, "They are all your belongings to begin with. I don't know why I'm going to pick them over and over again, but am borrowing something so close to me. Is it fun? Isn't it embarrassing?" Lu Xianying was stunned for a moment, stamped his feet lightly and asked with a tentative smile, "Is that possible?" Gukin said bluntly, "It's yours too." Lu Xianying raised his arms and shouted, "Brother Gu is not stingy." Gukin turned her back to the guy, raised her arms and raised her middle finger. Some people don't ask for a full glass of wine, but ask for a refill. Arriving at the formation hub of the Liuxia boat, Gu Lingyan, who was in charge of the helm, changed his attire with snow-white skin and long black clothes. With her beautiful eyes looking forward to it, she asked, "Master, have you really thought about choosing a location for the sect on Fuyao Island?" Today it was rare that Gukin was willing to chat with her for a few more words. Fuyao continent belongs to a new chessboard and a new chess game. In fact, it can display its tricks better than Tongye continent. The old sect's power was wiped out by the wild monster clan. If it is said that it will be the sect was built in the barbaric world, Fuchi can do it, but Gukin in the Yupu realm is not qualified for the time being, so I won't pretend to be fat. Besides, the master's entrustment of the entire Jinsue city to me is also a clear indication. I don't think well of others, otherwise my master will move Golden Suiching to Howran world, and I will turn around and return to the wild world. What's the matter? What's more, my years in Fuyao Island were not in vain. There are a lot of people who accuse me of being arrogant, but not many of them say that I am a bad person. Even if they heard about some of what I did in Shujian Lake in Aquarius continent in the early years, they thought it was nothing. Probably because they felt that compared to the wild monster clan, the raging rampage in Fuyao continent is indeed far behind. Chunqing, Su Bai and the others have to accept my feelings and can no longer regard me as a vicious person. In fact, if it were not for Chao Ci, we would most likely the whole army will be wiped out, but because he is Chao Ci, many people take it for granted deep down in their hearts. It is natural to be grateful to Chao Ci, but it is not necessarily true to say how grateful they are to him. This is how Chao Ci eats Chao Ci. Gu Kan, who did not have high expectations, instead took advantage of Gukin. She smiled and asked, "The plan is such a calculation and the truth is so many reasons. Does the young master have any selfish motives?" Gukin nodded and said, "Yes." She said curiously, "I would like to hear the details." Gukin smiled and said, "Fuyao continent seems to lack a character like Qin Pingan did to Aquarius continent." Gu Lingyan pretended to have a sudden realization. Her cheeks were flushed like a naive girl and she said shyly, "Young master, I have a small wish. If I can reach the Ascension realm, can you grant me one thing?" Gukin smiled and said, "As long as you reach the Ascension realm, I will lie still and ride as you please, galloping as you please." She said with a serious look, "You have agreed and you are not allowed to go back on it." Gukin nodded and said, "You remember to learn a few more Taoist techniques." This made her a little discouraged. There are too many experts in the 9 continents of Howran and the divine continent of Middle-earth, and no one dares to say that he is the leader of the immortal master on Izhou Mountain. Even if Fu Luyuxuan reaches the 14th realm, this will still be the case. Even Bai Yi, the most proud man in the world back then, would not think so. But the other 8 continents are very talkative. For example, Pa Di Feng Huolong Zhenren is recognized as the leader of both black and white in Luzhou, Beiju. Lu Jubao from Azu replaced Wei Shi, the master of the 72 peaks, in his early years. In Nanposu Island, there was once the mellow Confucian Qin Chunan who carried the sun and the moon on his shoulders. But now he has become Qi Tingji of the Dragon Elephant Sword sect. Tongyi's Hao used to be Du Mao, the Ascension realm of Tongye sect, but now he is Wei Ying, the great sword immortal of Jade Gui sect. He did it reluctantly, but in fact he could not really convince the public. The status of Jing Hao, the Taibao of Qing Palace, as the leader of the mountain on the bright side of Liuxia continent is also a fiction. The real owner of Qinggong Mountain is Qin Qinglu. For Fuyao continent and Jingjia continent, no leader of either continent said this. In Aquarius Island, the whereabouts of Lu Yen, whose Taoist name is Chunyang, are still unknown, and he is still not well known, so he does not support the scene and belongs to the outside world. If we don't talk about cultivation and just talk about Face, someone who serves as the new national advisor of Dali with the identity of the last hidden official of the Sword Chi Great Wall is considered acceptable? Gukin put his hands on his sleeves and said, "Learn Taoism in Baidi City and be the best in Fuyao continent." She blinked her eyes and said in a soft voice, "Young master, it seems you are not crazy enough. He is just the #1 person in Fuyao continent." Gukin twitched the corner of her mouth with a smile on her face that was extremely unrestrained. One day in the future, Ziwu Meng, named Chun Xiao, will feel that it was a great honor for her to decide to be a low-key personal maid for Gu Kan, especially for someone like you. The best choice I have ever made in my life, bar none. She stretched out her hand and patted her conscientious tall chest gently. Sir, to be honest, I don't think it's a great feat. It's far from the point of being so crazy. Gu Kan intertwined the fingers of his hands in his sleeves and said in a deep voice, no matter how far Qin Pingan walks on the road from now on, I will walk side by side with him. No matter how high he stands on the mountain top in the future, Gu Kan will stand side by side with him. Gu Lingyan smiled and narrowed his smart eyes. Young master, are you confident that one day in the near future, you will reach the 14th realm? The young man in Confucian shirt smiled softly and said, well, see. On the top of a mountain in the wilderness, an old man wearing a bamboo crown looked up at the sky, opened his mouth wide and made no sound. He just beat his chest gently one after another. It seems that if this is not the case, you will be out of breath. The old man cried with joy and tears, silently feeling the strong luck rolling in between heaven and earth. 14, this is 14. There is no unstoppable path for man, and it has been 10,000 years and he has finally reached this level. Previously, Qin Qinglu visited Baidi City and had a few heart-to-heart conversations with his good disciple Zheng Zhuzhong. It involves which wild monsters are most likely to take that step and be the first to reach the 14th realm. According to Zheng Zhuzhong's calculation, the answer he gave was extremely unexpected. In order they were Wang Youwu with the Taoist name Tiger, Li Guo by Jing and Womingxi. Just as Zheng Zhuzhong expected, the first great demon in the wild world to successfully merge with the Tao was this beauty who was least favored by others. Wang Youwu didn't bother to wipe her tears, stood up slowly, clasped her fists high and said loudly, Zhou thank you. In the vast world, in the Lu clan ancestral hall in Aizu, in the courtyard of Sisui Guitang, Lu Kaishan stretched out his hand to catch the rain. He stood here for many days. It is natural for merchants to make money. Lu Jubeo's road to harmony can be divided into two lines, one of which is relatively simple, which is spending money. Successfully join the Tao and reach the 14th realm. It is finally no longer impossible for Aizu to win back the word, north, from Beiju Luzhou. Qingming Qianxia, the co-sect master of Liangjingshan and Dachao sect, and a Taoist priest of Chaoga, Su Jun has repeatedly read the Su Wugui written by Master Baiyu Jinglu these days. When Su Jun turned to look out the window, it was already dawn. When he put down the book, Xuanhuan was in the 14th realm for no reason. Then the first ghost of the 14th realm appeared in the world. Su Jun couldn't laugh or cry about this. In the Western Buddhist country, Pang Yuanji, a swordsman from the Great Wall of Swords, has been following a disheveled monk who seems to have never been tonsured for so many years, and together they have sculpted 500 Arhat statues for the temple. In addition to this, the monk will also sit cross-legged in the corridor outside the temple, looking attentively, carving a Buddha statue of unknown material. For some reason, the monks carve statues in the hall during the day and outside the hall at night. They do not eat or sleep and do not rest until they are haggard and exhausted, unwilling to rest. Pang Yuanji also asked the abbot of the temple, how many years has this monk who never spoke a word been doing this? The old abbot only said that it had been many, many years. Pang Yuanji asked again, is he practicing closed-mouth meditation? The old abbot said that if it were not for the protection of the temple formation, every minute thought of that person would be like thunder from the sky. Pang Yuanji asked again, he had been carving Buddha statues outside the temple for so long, why didn't he carve the Buddha's face? The old abbot said that he was still looking for his true identity, and the Buddha statue he carved was none other than himself. Pang Yuanji couldn't help but ask, is it so difficult to become a Buddha? The old abbot said he was afraid it would be even more difficult. Pang Yuanji finally asked a question, what hair do monks have? The old abbot said that it was all an obsession that he couldn't let go of. The more he cut off, the more he cut off, and the more he cut off, the longer it became. It has been raining heavily for several days, and the sky and the earth at noon are as dark as night. I wonder if it will stop for a few more days. Today Pang Yuanji is sitting near the monk. He usually carves images outside the temple at night. Does the monk break his own precepts? Pang Yuanji never thought of copying the words in the book, hoping to help the monk a little bit. For example, why bother lighting a lamp during the day and why burn a candle in the middle of the day? After hearing such words, the monk would stop the carving knife in his hand, raise his head, smile at Pang Yuanji and thank him. Later, Pang Yuanji learned from the old abbot that the monk had read all the Buddhist scriptures in the world, and he could see all the recorded public cases. Pang Yuanji was suddenly startled. It turned out that the monk put down the carving knife in his hand and crushed the wooden statue into pieces. With his hands empty, he sat cross-legged, shook his head and murmured, "It won't work after all." Pang Yuanji seemed to be infected by the sad mood of the monk. This swordsman who had been away from home for many years also felt a little depressed. The monk looked at the dim rain curtain outside the corridor, and soon felt relieved that he could not become a Buddha, and it was not that he had nothing to do. He clasped his hands together, lowered his head and sang a Buddha chant. The young-looking monk stood up slowly, turned around and walked towards the main hall, crossing the threshold with one foot. Pang Yuanji recalled for no reason the past years in his hometown. It was said to be a story written by Chou Miao himself. Only Qin Pingan had read it and said it was well written. Chou Miao said that he had nothing to do and spent his time writing casually. "You have just read it?" But after the young hermit official said so, the summer palace began to cheer and cheer, which made Chou Miao extremely sad. She regretted telling the story that had no ending at that time. Pang Yuanji now only remembers a few dialogues in the book. They are deeply remembered and unforgettable to this day. In the book, a monk whose ending seemed destined to become a Buddha asked a disciple next to him who seemed destined not to become a Buddha, "Disciple, while there is still daylight, we might as well continue on our way. One more journey through the mountains and rivers is one more journey. Master, there is no reason why we should not walk during the day and at night. Why not rest first? It won't be too late to start tomorrow morning." "Disciple, we are traveling to the west to obtain Buddhist scriptures. How long do you think it will be before we can reach Mount Delying?" "Master, you have grown from childhood to old age. No matter how young you are, it will still be extremely difficult for you to go around 1,000 times. As long as you understand when you see your nature in your heart, when you turn around and look back, you will see the Buddha on the Lingshan mountain." The young monk retracted his foot, turned back to the corridor, and walked directly down the steps into the rain. Every time the monk took a step, his hair rustled down on his own, and a golden lotus appeared under his feet, filled with brilliance. When he stood still, the heavy rain stopped. "Rest is Bodhi. Turn around and become a Buddha." A sword light as powerful as a rainbow came from near Fuyazu in Haoran Xianxia, and cut through the gap between Yuming with a sharp sword. The woman looked around and saw Zhou Qinghuang holding a sacred weapon. She went straight to the dojo where the ghosts who had achieved the Ascension realm abandoned themselves. The territory of Fengdu is vast and vast, which is very different from the Yangjian. It is not just as simple as being separated by mountains and rivers, but there are hidden whirlpools of time everywhere. Ning Yao didn't say anything to Zhou Qinghuang and the kings of Fengdu palaces. He just stretched out a finger and scratched the center of his eyebrows, and the blood dripped like the eyes of the sky. She didn't even say harsh words to the candidate ghost of the 14th level. She just slashed it away with one sword. The world was densely packed with golden sword light, like trees and flowers in all directions. The enemy and us who are inexplicably enmity are thousands of miles apart. The bright sword light has passed through countless times swirling places. The sword light follows everything like a shadow, and ghosts have no way to hide. They are all ghosts and you still want to die, so let me die again. With just one sword strike, the ghost's head was chopped off. It was unclear whether it was swordsmanship, sword intention, sword technique, or kendo. The ghost and its true soul were blasted to pieces by the sword light. Ning Yao looked indifferent and just wiped away the blood between his eyebrows. The sword light dragged a long golden river, and the sword returned to its sheath with a clang. Zhong Kuei-Tsai, wearing a bright red robe, came here, stood beside Zhou Qinghuang and the others, pretending to be calm, and laughed and said, "She is Qin Pingan's Taoist companion. Everyone knows about this matter, so there is no need for you, Zhong Kuei, to go out of his way to explain to us who she is." Ning Yao pretended not to hear Zhong Kuei's words, clasped his fists and apologized, "Try your best not to do this again." When it was confirmed that Ning Yao had left and returned to Haoran, Zhong Kuei said seriously, "Ning Yao is still my sister-in-law. I have received their wedding invitations but you haven't." Zhou Qinghuang couldn't help laughing and asked, "Why didn't I hear the old scholar talk about this?" General Fan nodded and said, "That little nerd Pei Qian as Qin Pingan's founding disciple, she doesn't even know about this. Brother Zhong Kuei, you can do it." Zhong Kuei didn't look embarrassed at all. He held his belt with both hands and just said to himself, "You may not know that as far as my friendship with Qin Pingan is concerned, at their wedding banquet, Ning Yao had to toast not only 1 glass of wine to me, but also 2 glasses of wine to me. 1 cup is too few, 3 cups is not enough." Zhou Qinghuang asked, "Qin Pingan and Ning Yao are talking about each other. Do you really think they can't hear you?" Zhong Kuei shut up immediately. Earlier in the 100,000 Mountains, the old blind man in Gontang said that there would be a lot of water among the monks in the new 14th realm in the future, but Ningyao was an exception. At that time, Gontang was actually doubtful. He felt that the old blind man was partial to Ningyao, so he said something casual. If this general worshipper of Lolu Mountain had seen this scene with his own eyes, he would probably know that the old blind man's words were essentially without any water. There are 14 realms in the world. Ningyao casually slashed Feishing. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.